quiet hours. After midnight, there are stories that don't fade, they echo through empty hallways, across the static of old recordings, inside the walls of your mind. Each of them begins the same way, with something ordinary, a sound, a reflection, a gift, and each ends the same way too, with someone realizing they were never alone. Welcome to Little Dream, the Wigmaker's Promise. If you're hearing this, I suppose I never managed to take it off. My name is Eliza Ward. I used to teach art history at Tulane University in New Orleans. That city, it never really sleeps, you know. It just drifts from one kind of dream to another. Some nights, it's the hum of music and laughter spilling down Bourbon Street. Other nights, it's the silence between raindrops, thick enough to drown you. It began on one of those quiet days when the air smelled of magnolias and metal. I'd finished grading papers earlier than usual and decided to wander through the French Quarter just to clear my mind. I don't know why I turned down Dauphine Street. It's one of those narrow lanes that feels slightly out of sync with time, one step away from the tourists, one step deeper into something older. That's where I saw it. A tiny shop wedged between a jazz bar and a voodoo boutique. The sign above the door read Eternelle Beauté, vintage wigs and curiosities. I might have kept walking, but something in the window caught me. A single mannequin head stood there, pale as ivory, wearing a wig so real it seemed to breathe. The hair was auburn, long and wavy, glimmering under the yellow light like it had a heartbeat of its own. I told myself I'd just take a quick look. Inside, the air was heavy with dust and perfume, the kind that lingers decades after the woman who wore it is gone. The floor creaked beneath my shoes. Shelves leaned under the weight of glass cases, mannequin heads, and little boxes tied with ribbons gone gray with age. Every corner smelled faintly of time, like velvet that had soaked up whispers. The man behind the counter appeared silently, as though he'd been waiting for me. He was small, delicate in movement, with gloved hands and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You're looking for something personal," he said. Not asked, said. I told him I was just browsing. He nodded, the way people do when they already know you're lying. Then he turned and beckoned for me to follow. The back room was worse, colder, narrower, filled wall to wall with wigs displayed on mannequin heads. Each one had a little name tag tied around its neck with silk string. Clara, 1922. Béatrice, 1909. Marjorie, 1957. I asked if those were the names of the women who owned them. He smiled, faintly, almost tenderly, and ran a gloved hand through the hair of one. Every piece, he said, was made with a promise. I should have left then, but there was something about the way he said it, the way the air seemed to shiver when the word promise left his mouth. He unlocked a glass cabinet and took out a small wooden box, wrapped with a faded blue ribbon. This one, he said, was special. The hair belonged to an artist's muse, a woman who inspired him so deeply he could never let her go. When he placed the box in my hands, it was heavier than I expected. Inside lay the most beautiful wig I had ever seen. Deep, auburn strands, soft as breath, coiled like memory. I lifted it gently, and for a moment, I thought I felt warmth against my palms, not heat pulse. He noticed my reaction and smiled. "It's said," he whispered, "that when you wear the hair of another, you borrow their spirit. This one," he paused, "never liked to be alone." I tried to laugh, but the sound came out thin. He offered it for $50, absurdly cheap for something so fine. He said it felt right that it should belong to me. When I reached for my wallet, he leaned closer and tied the ribbon back around the box. I think he whispered something then, soft and old, but I couldn't make out the words. They burst my skin like cold breath. Outside, the air was thick with rain. The sound of a trumpet drifted from somewhere nearby, low, mournful, lonely. I remember clutching the box close to my chest, walking home through the mist. The weight of it felt comforting, almost intimate, like I was carrying something that finally wanted to be found. At home, I poured a glass of wine and opened the box again. The scent that escaped was faintly floral jasmine, maybe, but under it lingered something metallic, like brass rubbed raw. I brushed the wig out carefully, fingers trembling. A single strand came loose, darker than the rest, black, not auburn. It wrapped around my finger, stubborn, refusing to fall away until I shook it free. I don't know what made me try it on. Maybe curiosity, maybe vanity. But when I placed it on my head, it fit perfectly, too perfectly. It didn't feel like something worn. It felt like something remembering me. I went to the mirror. The reflection staring back wasn't quite me. My face was sharper, older somehow, touched with a sadness I didn't recognize. And the eyes, they looked wiser, crueler, as if they'd been waiting for this moment far longer than I could imagine. I laughed nervously, told myself I was being dramatic. But when I turned away, the reflection didn't move right away. It lingered, half a second too long. That night, I didn't take it off. I fell asleep wearing it, lulled by the faint scent of jasmine and something else, something sweet and wrong, like flowers left too long in water. When I woke up, my scalp itched. Just a little, like a new tag on a sweater. I reached up to tug at the wig, but it didn't move. The base felt warm, wet, even. I went to the bathroom mirror and leaned close. That's when I saw them. Tiny pink threads at my hairline. Not glue, not lace, flesh. I froze. My fingers trembled as I tried to find the seam, the edge where the wig should have lifted away, but there was none. Every strand seemed to grow directly from my skin. I panicked. I grabbed the scissors from the sink and tried to cut through it. The blades barely made a sound before snapping in half. I dropped them, hard hammering. My reflection stared back, calm, almost pitying. I called the shop, but the number on the receipt was disconnected. The next day, I went back to Dauphine Street. The jazz bar was still there, the voodoo shop too, but the space where Eternel Beauté had been was boarded up, paint flaking like dried skin. The sign above it said for rent. Dust covered the windows, as if it had been empty for years. That's when I heard it, a woman's voice, soft and close, as if whispering right behind me. "Promise me," she said. I turned, but the street was empty. The rain had stopped. Only the faint echo of my own breathing filled the air. That night, I dreamed of a painting studio. The walls were covered in portraits of the same woman, each more decayed than the last. She had my hair now long, auburn, alive. A man stood before her, his hands gloved in black, paint dripping from his brush like blood. When she turned toward me, her head tilted just slightly wrong, her eyes wide and hollow. She opened her mouth, and I felt her breath inside my skull. I woke up screaming. When I touched my pillow, I felt something wet. Hair. Not loose strands, roots. Tiny white bulbs where my own should have been. I ran to the mirror. My scalp looked red, raw, the wig glistening like new skin. I tried to rip it off. It didn't move. Instead, I felt a tug inside my skull, something resisting, pulling back. And then I heard it again. Not behind me this time. Inside me. Don't break the promise. I don't remember when the itching began. Maybe that night, after the jazz from the quarter had faded and the streetlights began to hum like tired bees. Or maybe it started earlier when I brushed the wig for the first time and felt a faint, static pulse travel through my fingertips like the thing had a heartbeat of its own. I thought it was just my nerves. Or humidity. New Orleans can do that, blur the line between the living and the dead until you can't tell if the thing pressing against your skin is air or memory. But now, every time I touch my scalp, I feel it. That crawling, that soft stirring beneath the surface. The morning after I bought it, I woke to find strands of hair tangled in my sheets. Not mine, darker, longer, with a slight wave that caught the light differently. I sat up, brushing at the pillow, thinking maybe the wig had shed. But when I looked in the mirror, the wig was still there, perfectly in place. I tried to take it off. My hands trembled as I reached up, feeling along the seam where it should have met my skin. Only, there was no seam, no edge. My scalp felt whole, smooth, unbroken, like it had always been there. For a moment, I laughed. I told myself I was being ridiculous, that maybe I'd just put it on too tight. The adhesive, maybe, or my imagination. But when I tugged hard, pain shot through my skull. Not the surface kind. Deeper. Rooted. It felt as though each strand was woven directly into me, thread by thread grafted to my very nerves. I called the antique shop. No one answered. I went there in person that afternoon, but the shutters were drawn, the sign gone. Only the faint outline of letters still clung to the glass, Lamont's Curiosities. Dust filled the inside like fog. There was no trace of the man who'd sold it to me. That's when the itching worsened. At first it came in waves, a prickling heat that pulsed beneath the scalp like something trying to breathe. I couldn't stop scratching. My nails scraped until the skin burned, but the sensation never left. It only moved from the crown of my head to the back of my neck, to just behind my ears. Once, I thought I felt a strand twitch beneath my fingers. It sounds insane when I say it out loud, but it wasn't imagination. I felt it move like a cat stretching after a long sleep. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every sound was louder, the creak of my old ceiling fan, the hum of the refrigerator, the whisper of my own breath. I kept turning over, brushing my fingers through the hair, hoping the tactile motion would calm me. But the hair felt warmer now, almost damp. I swear I could smell something faint, metallic, like copper left out in the rain. At 2 a.m., I got up and stood before the mirror again. The light above the sink flickered. My reflection looked like someone else, entirely the same eyes, the same mouth, but framed by that glossy, unfamiliar hair. It didn't look worn. It looked alive. When I tilted my head, the strand seemed to lag behind slightly, not following gravity, but something slower, heavier, as though resisting me. I started hearing the whispering 2 nights later. At first I thought it was the radio my old Crosley in the corner sometimes catches stray AM signals. But when I turned it off, the whispering didn't stop. It came from somewhere near my pillow, low and rhythmic. I leaned closer. The voice was a woman's, faint, like a breath through cloth. I couldn't make out the words, but it was inside the room, or maybe inside me. Sometimes, when I closed my eyes, I could almost feel her breath move against my scalp. I began keeping a journal, notes, dates, times. I wanted to believe this was stress, that I could track it, control it somehow. But the more I wrote, the stranger the entries became. Tuesday, 11:42 p.m. Heard her again. Whispered, mine. Wednesday, 3:10 a.m. Hair feels tighter today. Scalp throbs. Thursday, 9:15 p.m. Found hair in the drain again. But when I checked the mirror, nothing missing. I tried washing it out, scrubbing until the water turned pink. But the hair didn't come loose. In fact, it seemed thicker afterward. When I brushed it, the brush came away with a faint residue. Not oil, but something darker. Sticky. The smell, like old perfume and rust. A week passed before I dared to go out again. The itching had become constant by then, a dull vibration beneath the skin. I wore a scarf to hide the hair, but people still stared. Not because they recognized me, but because they didn't. One woman at the museum where I worked stopped mid-sentence, frowning. "Eliza," she said softly, "did you dye your hair?" I almost told her the truth, that it wasn't dye, that I didn't even know what this color was. But then she reached out to touch it, and before I could stop her, she froze. Her fingers brushed a strand, and she flinched back as if burned. "Static," she murmured, shaking her hand. But her eyes said something else. That night, I found something beneath my nails. Tiny, pale flakes, not skin. Something finer, softer. When I held them up to the light, they shimmered faintly. Root tissue, maybe. Or something that used to be alive. I should have gone to a doctor. I should have done 100 things differently. But the thought of explaining it, trying to explain it, made me feel ridiculous. How do you tell someone your wig has become part of you? Instead, I cut my hair, or tried to. The scissors snagged halfway through. Each snip made a wet, fibrous sound, like slicing cartilage. I gritted my teeth and kept going, but when I reached the roots, Pain exploded through my head. I screamed, dropped the scissors, clutching at my scalp. Blood slicked my fingers. And then, the strangest thing, the hair began to move. It twisted around my wrist, coiling, tightening like it was trying to stop me. I pulled back, terrified, and stumbled into the sink. The mirror shuddered, catching the dim light, and for a split second, I saw her reflection within my reflection. A pale face, eyes wide, lips slightly open, mouth forming a single word: stop. I didn't sleep for 2 nights after that. When I finally did, I dreamed of a woman sitting at a vanity, her back to me, the same long black hair cascading over her shoulders. She was brushing it slowly, humming something soft and sad. I stepped closer. Her reflection met mine in the mirror, not in surprise, but in recognition. And then she smiled. Now the itching isn't just beneath the skin. It's in my thoughts. Sometimes, I hear her whisper when I blink flashes of her voice between heartbeats. "You look better with it on," she says. "Don't take it off." I feel her memories bleeding into mine. Phrases I don't recognize. Music from another time. A faint scent of lilac and smoke. Every day I wake up feeling a little less like myself. And the strangest part? Somewhere, deep inside, a small voice, maybe hers, maybe mine, keeps saying, "You promised." I stopped leaving the apartment 3 days ago. The outside world feels incompatible now. Too bright, too loud. The light hits me wrong, makes my scalp ache. Even through the curtains, I can feel its sunlight sinking into the hair, warming it like flesh. It hums when it does that. I didn't notice it at first, the low vibration, almost inaudible. But now, when the city grows quiet, it's all I can hear. Like a purring thing that lives on me, content and awake. I keep telling myself I'm still me, that I can still peel this thing off, call someone, go back to work. But every reflection I pass says otherwise. The mirror in my bathroom has become an enemy. I've started covering it with towels, scarves, anything. But every so often I forget, or maybe it forgets to hide itself. It's strange how a reflection can feel wrong. Not different, just slightly delayed. When I move, my reflection hesitates, a fraction of a second behind. The first time I noticed, I thought it was the light. But when I leaned in, the reflection didn't. It just stared back. 2 nights ago, I decided to test it. I set up my phone camera facing the mirror and pressed record. Then, I lifted my right hand. The reflection lifted its left, as it should. But then, I switched, lifted the left hand, and the reflection didn't move. It just smiled. A slow, deliberate smile that stretched too wide, too calm. I dropped the phone. The screen cracked when it hit the sink, freezing the image mid-smile, that unnatural stillness, her teeth like a pale line of light. When I checked the recording later, there was nothing. The video glitched, a static blur, where my reflection should have been. But the audio remained, a faint whisper, too low to decipher. Except one word, closer. I haven't touched the scissors again. I've thought about it, yes. I've dreamed about shaving everything off, taking a razor to my scalp until there's nothing left but smooth skin and silence. But every time I reach for the blades, my hands shake uncontrollably. Sometimes I wake up to find the scissors moved, placed neatly on the counter, blades open like a threat. Last night, I found them under my pillow. The hair's grown longer. I don't know how it's possible. It should not that fast. It used to rest just above my shoulders. Now it brushes my waist. I find strands everywhere in the sink. The drain, wrapped around my wrists while I sleep. Once, I felt something cold brush my cheek, like a strand moving on its own. I told myself it was the wind, except there was no wind. The windows were closed. I've started hearing her voice more clearly. It's always the same, a soft murmur near my left ear, a lullaby tone that slides between English and something older, softer. Sometimes she hums. Other times she speaks my name slow, careful, like tasting it. Eliza. I've tried ignoring it, talking over it, But she doesn't like that. The more I resist, the more painful the itching becomes. Yesterday, it felt like fire spreading through my scalp. I pressed a cold cloth to it, and when I pulled the cloth away, several strands came with it still warm, still moving. They curled around my fingers like they didn't want to let go. This morning, something new. I looked into the mirror just for a second and saw two faces, not side by side, not overlaid, but interlaced. Her eyes peered through mine, her mouth curved inside my mouth. It wasn't possession, not exactly, it was merging. And for a moment I felt it, her thoughts fluttering against my own. I saw flashes. A parlor with lace curtains, a man standing behind her, the glint of scissors in candlelight, his face pale with guilt. Her hair, this hair spilling across the floor like dark silk. I saw him weeping, and then cutting. The images vanished as quickly as they came, but they left behind a residue, an ache in my temples, a taste of iron in my mouth. I think I know who she was now. I found her name inside one of my art books, almost by accident. Marianne Duval, a French-American painter from the 1920 seconds. Her husband, Etienne, was known for his portraits, mostly of her, but one day, she stopped appearing in his work. The last recorded painting of her unfinished shows her sitting in front of a vanity, her hair cascading down one side, half her face turned away. No one ever found her body. Only the hair. I think that's where it came from. The wig. The promise. Maybe Lamont, the man who sold it to me, didn't lie when he said it belonged to an artist. He just left out which one. I wonder what kind of promise could bind a soul so tightly to something so fragile. Did she swear she'd never be forgotten? Did he promise to keep a part of her close, no matter the cost? If that's true, then I'm wearing the remainder of their love story, and I think she wants me to finish it. The voice grows stronger at night now. Sometimes she doesn't whisper, she commands. Brush it. Don't eat it. Look at me. And I obey. Not because I want to, but because I feel her pulse through my scalp when I don't. When I brush it, she quiets. The hair moves, with each stroke, like a living thing, breathing in rhythm. If I stop too soon, the pain returns. I've caught myself humming her tune. The same one from my dreams, that melancholy waltz that smells of lilac and smoke. It's not just in my head anymore. I heard it yesterday coming from the other room. Soft, muffled, like someone humming through water. I set up the phone again tonight. Not for proof, I don't need proof anymore, but to understand. I hit record and sat before the mirror. The lights were dim, just the faint glow of a single lamp behind me. My reflection sat perfectly still. Who are you? I asked. No answer. Marianne? A pause. Then the reflection smiled, that same gentle, terrible smile. The air grew heavier. I heard it again, the whisper from somewhere behind my ears. Promise. That word again. I don't remember falling asleep, but when I woke, the mirror was uncovered. There were handprints on the glass. Look, Mina. They were too small, too slender, and between them, scrawled faintly in condensation, a single phrase. He broke his promise. He won't. I can't think straight anymore. The memory's hers, mine, they're blending. I see flashes when I blink. Candlelight, paintbrushes, scissors, blood. A promise whispered between lovers. I'll make you eternal. He did, in a way. He turned her into art, into hair, into me. Now I carry her. And sometimes, when I catch my reflection out of the corner of my eye, I don't feel fear. I feel relief. Because she's beautiful. Because she's free. Because maybe this was always the plan. It's late now. The hair is draped across my shoulders, heavy and warm. It feels like arms, like comfort. I've stopped fighting the itch. It doesn't hurt anymore. When I close my eyes, I can feel her breathing with me. Two hearts, one body. I think I finally understand the promise. She doesn't want to take my life. She wants to share it. It's been, I don't know how many days. The calendar on the wall still says October 18th, but I've stopped turning the pages. The clock ticks, but time doesn't move. It just hums, like the hair does. Sometimes I think the sound is in the walls, a low, pulsing vibration that syncs with my heartbeat. But then I touch my scalp, and I realize it's coming from there, from her, from us. I should be frightened. I used to be. But the fear has thinned out like old paint washed by rain. What remains is something gentler, heavier, a weight I've grown used to carrying. It began with the dreams again. Every night I see the same room, a studio flooded with amber light, canvases leaning against the walls, their subjects half finished, and always that vanity in the corner, with its cracked mirror and silver brush. She's there, Marianne, humming softly, while I watch from behind her shoulder. The melody is different each time, but the rhythm never changes. A slow waltz, the same tempo as my pulse. Sometimes she speaks to me, not with words, but through feeling. A pull, a need. She wants to finish something. When I wake, there's paint beneath my fingernails. I don't own any paint. I found the brush too, an old one. Its handle carved with initials. E.D. Etienne Duval. The husband, her artist. I think I know what she's trying to do now. I started finding things that weren't there before, canvases stacked near the door, the faint scent of turpentine in the air. The first time I saw them, I nearly fainted. They were mine, but they were of me. Portraits unfinished, blurred, yet unmistakable. The tilt of my head, the curve of my neck, my hair cascading like a black river. Some showed me with eyes closed, others with eyes open too wide. One showed both two sets of eyes in the same face. I've stopped denying it. The wig isn't an object anymore. It's an organ. It feeds not on blood, not on flesh, but on attention, on gaze. When I sit before the mirror, it hums louder. When I brush it, it seems to glow, drinking in my reflection like nourishment. Maybe that's what Marianne wanted, to be seen again, to exist through sight, and I am her vessel. Yesterday, I left the apartment for the first time in weeks. I wrapped a scarf around my head, but it kept slipping. The air outside was thick with rain, the kind that blurs everything: colors, sounds, even faces. People stared again. Not in disgust this time, but in confusion. An old man near the corner of Shark Street stopped mid-step. "Miss," he said, squinting, "your hair's moving." I smiled and kept walking. It was moving, yes. I could feel it sway against the rain, curling protectively around my shoulders, as though shielding me. It no longer hides what it is. That night, I dreamt of the wig maker, not Lamont, someone older than time. A woman with hands like paper and eyes the color of tarnished brass. She sat in a room filled with strands, black, brown, gold, all floating, suspended as though underwater. Each strand hummed softly. She told me, in a voice like dust, "Every hair remembers its root." When I asked what that meant, she smiled a sad, thin smile. "The promise was never for you, child. You just happened to keep it." When I woke, I couldn't feel my scalp anymore. It wasn't numb, more like shared, like my nerves were rewired, branching outward into something else. My fingers trembled as I touched the hair. It pulsed gently under my touch, like veins just beneath the skin. That's when I realized it wasn't growing longer. It was growing deeper. The roots had begun to spread downward, threading into my neck, my spine. I could feel them tracing paths along my shoulders, burrowing softly, rhythmically. Not invasive, intimate, feeding thread by thread. I've started hearing her thoughts now clearer each day. Not as whispers, but as intrusions. She doesn't speak in words anymore. She shows me, her husband, Etienne, promising her something before she died. "I'll make you eternal, my muse." And he did, in the most literal way. He took her hair after the fever, wove it into a wig, and wore it while he painted her final portrait. It's still out there somewhere, unfinished. That's the promise she made him keep and failed to. Now she's making me finish it. I don't fight her anymore. Last night, I found myself painting. I don't remember starting, or mixing the colors, or setting up the easel, but when I stepped back, There was the same image from my dreams. The vanity, the cracked mirror, the woman brushing her hair. Only this time, it wasn't her. It was me, and she was behind me, in the reflection, smiling. The feeding has grown stronger. My scalp burns when I resist. My vision flickers when I look away from the mirror. Sometimes I wake with clumps of my own hair on the floor, yet my reflection shows none missing. It's as if the loss is only mine. Hair remain perfect, whole. I called the museum this morning, left a voicemail. I told them to lock the archives, to check the Duval exhibit, to burn anything that smells of lilac. I don't know if they'll understand. Maybe they'll think it's another breakdown. But I've seen the truth now. Marianne doesn't just inhabit the hair, she moves through memory itself. Every time someone looks at her portrait, every time someone touches a lock, she stirs. She rewrites. And the hair is how she spreads. My reflection moves before I do now. It anticipates me brushing, smiling, breathing slightly off sync. When I tilt my head, she tilts a little too far, as if mocking my control. But when I whisper her name, she softens. "Marianne," I said last night. "What do you want?" Her lips parted in the glass, perfectly mirroring mine. "To be seen," she mouthed. Then she reached forward, her hand pressing against the inside of the mirror. For a moment, the glass yielded. I should have run. I didn't. Instead, I lifted my own hand. The surface was cool, trembling like the skin of water. Our fingertips met, and everything went quiet. No city sounds. No heartbeat. No breath. Only the hum of the hair, a low, endless chord vibrating through bone and thought. When I pulled my hand back, the reflection didn't. She stayed there smiling. And then, she began to move toward me. I don't remember what happened after that. I woke up on the floor, the mirror shattered. My head ached, but the hair felt lighter, softer. The pieces of glass reflected fragments of me, hundreds of eyes, hundreds of mouths, each one slightly different. In one shard, I saw her face, and she winked. Now, I think I understand the final step. The feeding is nearly complete. She's almost whole again. I can feel it the way the strands tighten at night, drawing me closer to the mirror, pulling me toward the reflection that no longer feels separate. Soon there will be no Eliza. No Marianne. Only the promise. If anyone finds this, don't try to burn it. It won't work. Hair doesn't burn. It remembers. Just like she said, I don't remember when the itching stopped. Maybe it never did. Maybe my nerves simply gave up, worn down by the constant hum beneath my scalp, the whisper of something that wasn't quite mine. For days, I stopped going outside. The curtain stayed drawn, the light low. I could feel the weight of the hair pressing down, not just on my head but inside me, threading through my thoughts. Every time I blinked, it felt like 1,000 tiny roots clinging to the back of my eyes. I tried to distract myself, made tea, read old catalogs, watched the rain slide down the window, but every reflection in the glass seemed slightly wrong. The outline of my face shimmered, the pupils darkened. Sometimes, the mouth moved a fraction after mine did. I told myself it was fatigue, a trick of nerves and shadows, but I could feel her, patient and steady, waiting beneath my skin. At night, I could hear the hair moving. It had a rhythm, a slow sighing sound, like waves under the floorboards. When I lay still, it whispered against the pillow, curling, growing, winding around my neck. I began to sleep sitting up, afraid that if I lay flat, it would cover my mouth. I started avoiding the mirror in the bathroom. There was something about that space, the sound of dripping pipes, the faint buzz of the fluorescent light that seemed to wake her. The first time I caught her face instead of mine, it lasted only an instant. But it was enough. The eyes, hollow, dark, and endless, looked back at me with a grief so dense it pressed into my chest. I remember the way her lips moved, though no sound came. "You promised," she mouthed. That word again. Promise you. I thought back to the wig shop, to the way the old woman had said it with such care. The wig maker's promise. She had called it like a brand or a warning. A piece made with devotion, hair bound with memory. I had thought it was just poetic. A sales pitch for the superstitious. But now I understood. Promises can rot if left unkept. The woman in the mirror wasn't angry, at least not yet. She looked disappointed, like I'd taken something precious from her and failed to honor it. I didn't know how to make it right. That night, I cut again. The scissors trembled in my hands. Every strand I tried to snip seemed to tighten, resisting. When I finally forced a small clump off, blood welled immediately, not from the scalp, but from somewhere deeper. The strands in my palm quivered alive, pulsing faintly like veins. I dropped them into the sink and they slithered toward the drain, clinging to the porcelain before disappearing. After that, I didn't sleep. I sat by the window and waited for dawn. But dawn didn't bring relief. The sunlight touched the strands with a dull sheen, and for the first time, I noticed it. Her color was overtaking mine. My original hair, a warm chestnut, was fading into her shade. Black with an undertone of blue, like a bruise healing backward. Every time I brushed, I found more of her in the bristles, and when I leaned close, the scent had changed to no longer shampoo or perfume, but something faintly metallic, like old scissors and rain-soaked iron. On the third day, the voices began again. Not whispers this time, but a single voice humming softly, the way one might hum to soothe a child. It was an old tune, sad and circular, one I recognized from the background jazz that had played in the antique store. The melody wound itself through my thoughts until I found myself humming along. That's when the memories started. Flashes that weren't mine, a stage lit by candlelight, an artist painting a woman in profile, his hand trembling with devotion. Then an argument, a scream, a sound like tearing fabric. I saw her lying there, hair hacked unevenly, the artist standing over her, his eyes hollow with regret. And then I saw the wig, her hair, carefully arranged, reattached to a faceless form. The wig maker's hands moving slowly, reverently, whispering the same phrase over and over. A promise is a binding thing. When I opened my eyes, I was on the bathroom floor. The scissors lay beside me, slick with blood, and the mirror was fogged with breath. But I hadn't been breathing. She was closer now. I could feel her in my bones. When I spoke, the sound carried a faint echo, like another voice repeating my words, half a heartbeat later. Sometimes, I forgot which voice was mine. I tried recording myself, thinking maybe I could document it, analyze it later. But the playback only brought static, and beneath the static, a faint humming her song. When I played it backward, I could swear I heard words. You wore me, now I wear you. By the fifth night, I gave up pretending. I stood before the mirror again, the only light a faint shimmer from the street lamp outside. My reflection looked tired, but peaceful. The hair felt perfectly, every strand obedient, gleaming like ink. And then she smiled. I didn't. The motion was subtle at first, a twitch at the corner of the mouth, but then the grin spread wider, too wide. I touched my lips, they were still. She was grinning on her own, and I realized she wasn't trapped behind the glass anymore. The glass was just a threshold. I leaned closer. So did she. I could feel her breath, though there was no air between us. Her eyes were soft now, almost tender. I wanted to look away, but she wouldn't let me. The reflection's gaze held mine, unyielding, and something inside me loosened, like a knot coming undone. I felt the first pull deep inside my scalp. It wasn't pain. It was surrender. A slow, irresistible draw, like water, finding its level. The glass trembled, the edges rippling as though it were liquid. And then quietly, without any sound at all, she reached through. I didn't scream. I think I smiled too. For a moment, there was peace. The humming stopped, the itch dissolved, and the weight lifted from my head. Everything was still. When I opened my eyes, I was standing in a room I didn't recognize. It was the shop, but younger, the colors brighter, the air thick with perfume and varnish. On the counter lay the wig, untouched, waiting, and beside it stood the woman I'd seen in the memories. The wife, the one with the black-blue hair. She looked at me with quiet understanding. "You kept the promise," she said. I tried to speak, but my voice came out in her tone. She smiled faintly, then faded into the air, leaving only her reflection in the nearby glass. Now, when I walk past the mirror, I see myself again. My face, my hair, my eyes. Everything looks right, but every now and then, when I blink, there's a delay, a heartbeat between movement and reflection. Sometimes, in the corner of the glass, I still see her watching. Not angry, just patient, waiting for someone else to try it on. And when the night is quiet enough, I can hear the soft sound of hair growing slow and steady, like breathing. The silent cloak. I don't remember the exact day the letter arrived. Only the light, that pale, colorless kind that winter leaves behind when it's too tired to shine. It slipped across my window and landed on an envelope lying against the frost-rimmed glass. Thick paper. Heavy. The smell of wood and dust. No return address, just a wax seal, pressed with the image of a cloak caught mid-whirl. I thought it was a mistake, but inside was a note. Handwritten. Ink smudged like tears dried in haste. "We've heard of your fascination with fabric. Bring the emptiest part of yourself. Friday night. This address. No name. Just the symbol. Therefore." I set it on my desk and tried to work. But all day, the silence in my studio felt heavier. The bolts of cloth around me, silk, wool, chiffon, seemed to listen. To wait. I used to be a designer. Freelance, scattered. Barely scraping by, but alive in it. Lately, though, the commissions had stopped. The phone was silent. Even my own sketches looked unfamiliar, like someone else's dreams I'd stolen and forgotten how to return. When Friday came, I went. The building stood at the edge of the industrial quarter, near the docks. Number 23 Amperes. No sign, no lights, just the sound of the sea wind moving through broken windows. I knocked 3 times, as the letter had said. A man opened the door, tall, black suit, white gloves, eyes that didn't seem to focus. "Evelyn Gray?" I nodded. "You're expected." He stepped aside, and the smell of cold metal and burnt wool drifted out. Inside, the club was nothing like I imagined. No chatter, no music, only the quiet sound of fabric brushing fabric and the muted tap of heels on warped wood. Everyone was dressed in black, but not the kind of black you buy. It was deeper, almost liquid. At the center of the room stood a round platform, draped in velvet. Hanging above it, a cloak, not kind of garment, more like darkness, stitched together by human hands. A woman approached me, tall, hair silver, eyes the color of ash. "You feel it, don't you?" she said softly, her voice nearly breathless, the silence woven through the threads. I hesitated. "I think I do." She smiled faintly. "Then it feels you, too." She handed me a glass of wine. It was so dark it looked black, thick as old blood. I drank metallic, salt, and warm. She led me toward the cloak. "This is the silent cloak. No one knows who made it, but everyone who's worn it has left something of themselves inside." I tried to smile, like an artist leaving a piece of soul in their work. "No," she said, touching the fabric. "The work keeps the soul for itself." Up close, it didn't look like wool. Each fiber trembled, almost breathing. When the light brushed across it, I saw motion beneath the weave, slow and rhythmic, as though something lived just under the surface. It made me shiver, and yet I couldn't look away. "It will choose its next wearer under the waning moon," the woman whispered. "You can try, if you dare." "Try? Wear it." I laughed, thinking she was teasing me. No one laughed back. A man in a white shirt stepped forward, lifted the edge of the cloak, and held it out to me. I touched it. Cold, first sharp, clean, pure, then warmth, like someone pressing a calm hand against my throat, whispering, "Don't be afraid. I'm here." When I let go, A faint scent lingered on my fingers, soil and ash. I left before the presentation began. No one stopped me. The silver-haired woman only watched, her voice low and weightless. "You'll come back. No one escapes what has touched them." I didn't answer. Outside, snow had begun to fall. The city was quiet, shuttered, like a photograph losing its color. At the bridge, I reached into my pocket and found a thread. Black, soft, warm, despite the wind. I swear it hadn't been there before. I held it between my fingers, remembering her words, the way that cloth had felt alive under my hand. And then I heard it, a whisper faint, fragile, just beside my ear. "I'm still here." I froze. No one around. Only the snow, the wind, and the thread trembling in my palm. It started with the dream. Or maybe not a dream, not entirely. More like a memory wearing a mask. I was standing in front of the mirror in my studio. The room was dark, except for a single strip of light leaking from the window. My reflection was still too still, as if it had been waiting for me longer than I'd realized. And there, draped across the mannequin behind me, was the cloak, only I never brought it home. When I woke, the air was freezing. I could see my breath. The thread I'd kept on my desk, that black thread I'd found in my pocket, was gone. In its place lay a small scrap of fabric, folded perfectly, as though someone had cut it from the edge of a larger hole. I told myself it was nothing, an overactive mind, a trick of exhaustion. But that morning, I kept feeling something brush against the back of my neck, soft, like strands of hair or wool. By afternoon, I couldn't focus. I kept sketching the same shape, a silhouette wrapped in folds of fabric, its head tilted as though listening. Every time I looked away, the charcoal seemed to smear itself deeper into the page. I left the studio before dusk. I didn't plan to go back to the club, but my feet carried me there anyway. The door was open this time. Inside, the same dim light, the same whispering quiet, the same woman, silver hair gleaming like frost. "You came back," she said. I wanted to tell her she was wrong, that it wasn't me who came back, it was something else, something she'd left behind in me. But my voice wouldn't come out. She led me to a smaller room in the back. Mirrors lined the walls. There was a single chair, and beside it, a rack of garments covered in black silk. "Sit," she said. I did. From beneath one of the silk coverings, she drew the cloak. The same one or another made from it, I couldn't tell. It didn't just absorb light, it drank it, pulling the air around it into silence. She placed it across my shoulders. For a moment, it was bliss, warmth spreading through my arms, my spine, my throat. I exhaled a deep, shuddering breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding for days. The room faded at its edges. The sound of my heartbeat slowed until it matched the rhythm of something beneath the fabric. A pulse, faint but steady. It was breathing with me. "Do you feel that?" she whispered. "Yes, good. That means it recognizes you." Her hands tightened slightly on my shoulders. "You'll learn," she said. "It doesn't feed on blood or flesh, only on what you waste, the noise, the small talk, the endless need to be noticed." Her reflection in the mirror was blurry, as though fogged. Mine was too clear, too sharp, like a cut through glass. She smiled. "You've always wanted to disappear, haven't you?" I didn't answer, but she must have heard the truth in my silence. When I got home that night, I didn't take the cloak off. It was the first warmth I'd felt in weeks, not just against my skin, but inside it. My thoughts stopped trembling. The constant hum of anxiety that had followed me since I could remember went quiet. I moved slower, breathed deeper, slept without dreaming. For 3 days I barely left my apartment. The phone rang once, a number I didn't recognize. I stared at it until it stopped. When I checked later, there was no record of any call. On the 4th day I tried to sketch again, but every page came out blank. The charcoal refused to leave a mark. Even when I pressed until it broke, I didn't panic. I told myself it was fine. That silence was a kind of art too. That night, I stood before the mirror again. The cloak shimmered faintly, like wet ink under moonlight. The air around me was still unnaturally so, and then I realized I couldn't hear my own breathing. I placed a hand against my chest. My heart was still beating, but no sound came. Not from me, not from the world. Only the cloak shifting slightly, as though exhaling for the both of us. I don't know how long I stood there. When I tried to speak, to call out, even to whisper, the words came out hollow, muted, like they'd been swallowed before they could form. It didn't feel wrong, though. It felt peaceful, weightless. I remember thinking, maybe this is what it means to finally belong to something. Later, when I looked in the mirror again, I noticed something else. The reflection wasn't moving in sync anymore. My hands hung at my sides, but in the glass, they trembled. My eyes blinked a second too late, and then, for just a heartbeat, the reflection smiled, while I did not. That's when I understood what she'd meant by the fitting. The cloak wasn't adjusting to me. I was adjusting to it. It began so quietly that I didn't notice at first. The small erasures, the little vanishings. The world didn't remove me all at once. It did so kindly, politely, almost tenderly. The first to forget was the barista at the cafe below my apartment. He'd always remembered my order, oat milk, no sugar. But that morning, he looked at me like I was a stranger, waiting for me to speak a name that didn't belong to anyone anymore. "Sorry," he said, frowning. "Have we met?" I laughed it off, told myself I'd been away too long. But when I turned to leave, I caught my reflection in the cafe window. For a moment, it wasn't there, only the coat rack behind me, swaying gently as though something invisible had brushed past. At home, I checked my phone. No messages, no calls, even the old ones. The ones from friends, clients. My mother were gone. The call log had been wiped clean. I stared at the empty screen, feeling the quiet sink its teeth into me. It wasn't silence anymore. It was a presence, a pulse beneath everything. When I tried to call someone, anyone, the signal held for a second before collapsing into static. In that static, I could almost hear my name, stretched thin, breaking apart. Evelyn, like the echo of a voice that had already left the room. That night, I dreamed again. I was in the club or somewhere that resembled it, but empty now, stripped of its opulence. Only the mirrors remained. I walked past them one by one, watching my reflection fade each time until there was nothing but the black fabric suspended between them. The cloak hung in the center, weightless, swaying as if stirred by breath. When I stepped closer, I saw faces within it, hundreds, all blurred, silent, mouths half open like they were still trying to speak. And I recognized one of them, mine. I woke gasping. The room was cold again. The cloak was still wrapped around me, heavier now, its texture different, not wool, not fabric. Something softer, denser, alive. It moved slightly with my heartbeat. When I tried to pull it off, it resisted. Not violently, gently, like a lover asking me not to leave. Just one more moment, I whispered to myself, but the whisper didn't make a sound. By the end of the week, people stopped noticing me completely. The landlord walked past me in the hallway without a glance. My reflection in shop windows was thin, almost transparent, like fog trying to remember it once had a shape. Even photographs betrayed me. On Tuesday, I found an old Polaroid of my graduation, a group of us laughing under the winter Sunday. But the spot where I stood was empty, the edges frayed, the light distorted, as if rejecting my image. I pressed my thumb against the blank space, and for a second, the outline of my face flickered there only to fade again, as though the paper couldn't bear the weight of remembering me. The cloak had grown quieter too, not heavy but dense. When I moved, it moved with me, perfectly synchronized. The longer I wore it, the less I could tell where it ended and I began. Sometimes I thought I heard whispers not from outside, but from within the threads, a chorus of breaths, each one faintly familiar. They weren't words exactly, more like sighs of memory, 1,000 unfinished thoughts pressing softly against my skin. I stopped leaving the apartment. The world beyond the window had lost its texture. Streets blurred into one another. People drifted past like shadows in fog. The city had become a reflection of what I was turning into, something observed but not inhabited. And yet, there was peace in it. No noise, no judgment, no hunger to be seen. The cloak offered silence, and I accepted it. Sometimes, I stood before the mirror for hours, watching what little of me remained. The face that looked back was faint, like a memory receding into water. One night, as I watched, I saw movement shape behind me, reflected where no one stood. It leaned close, its outline merging with mine, and whispered, in a voice that was almost kind, "You see? This is what you wanted. No one can hurt what no one can find." My hand lifted toward the glass, or maybe it wasn't mine anymore. The reflection smiled, the same slow, deliberate smile as before, and then the lights flickered. When they steadied again, the reflection was gone. Only the cloak remained, draped over the chair behind me, folded, still breathing, waiting. I think that was the moment I understood. It hadn't been protecting me. It had been teaching me slowly, tenderly how to disappear, not as punishment, as release, because vanishing is not death. It's the mercy of being forgotten. I stopped recognizing my own reflection around the third morning. It wasn't that my face had changed, not at first, but that it no longer belonged to me. When I looked in the mirror, I saw a woman trying to remember how to inhabit her own skin. The black cloak draped across the chair behind me looked innocent in the dim blue light, like a loyal pet waiting for its owner. But when I turned away, I could feel it watching. The apartment had grown quieter. The radiator no longer hissed. The fridge's hum seemed to die at dawn and never return. I could hear my heartbeat against the silence, a pulse I wasn't sure was still mine. That morning, when I walked to the cafe near Rue de Charonne, no one met my eyes. The barista, who always smiled at me, didn't look up. I placed a coin on the counter. It rolled, spun, and stopped. He didn't move. I whispered, "Bonjour." No answer. I touched his wrist. My fingers went through him. It was like touching fog. When I looked down, I saw the edge of the cloak slipping out from under my coat sleeve, a thin, living thread winding around my wrist, pulsing faintly. I tore it off, or tried to. My fingers trembled, clawing at the fabric. It didn't tear. It melted into my skin. That's when I realized I hadn't taken the cloak off in days. I couldn't remember sleeping without it. I couldn't remember sleeping at all. At night, I dreamt of the club again, the one where I first saw it, a small underground room beneath the old church. Candles and empty wine bottles, a crowd of silhouettes swaying to no rhythm, and her, the woman with the hollow eyes, wearing the same black wool cloak, watching me as if she'd been waiting. In the dream, she smiled and whispered something in a language I didn't know. I woke up with her breath still on my cheek. The next morning, my phone didn't recognize my face. The code I'd used for years failed, again and again. I tried speaking to it. "Hey Siri." It didn't respond. It wasn't that it didn't hear. It didn't register that anyone was speaking at all. I think that's when I began fading, not disappearing, not dying, but unbeing. Like the air around me forgot the shape of my body. Yesterday, there was a knock at my door. When I opened it, a woman stood there, shivering in the gray hallway light. She looked young, tired, her lips cracked from the cold. In her hands, a small paper bag of groceries. "Hi," she said softly. "I think this was delivered to your unit by mistake." I opened my mouth to thank her. Nothing came out. Her gaze slid past me, unfocused. "Hello," she said again, peering into the apartment. I stepped closer, reaching out. The fingers brushed her sleeve. She flinched. Then she froze, staring into the dark behind me. Her face went pale. What is that?" she whispered. Before I could turn, something heavy brushed past my shoulder. The black cloak, moving on its own, folding itself over her like a tidal wave of fabric. Her scream was brief, muffled, smothered. When it ended, only silence remained. And then, she was gone. Her groceries spilled across the floor, an apple rolling toward the door, a bottle of milk leaking slowly into the seams of the wood. The cloak hung from the coat rack again, perfectly still, but now it looked fuller, heavier, satisfied. I think I know now what it wants. Not to eat, not to destroy, to fill itself with what it takes. Each time someone forgets me, each time the world looks past me, it grows more visible, more real. I'm in shadow now. I can still hear her voice sometimes, the girl from the hallway, whispering from inside the fabric when I brush past it. It's like an echo trapped in wool. Maybe she's still there. Maybe we both are. There's a small party tonight, my old friends from university. They won't remember to invite me, of course, but I think I'll go anyway. The cloak is waiting by the door, and I've begun to understand its hunger when I wear it. People don't see me, but they feel something in the room, a chill, a quiet dread, a shadow that lingers too long. It feels peaceful. I think that's what it means to become the hollow guest. Not absent, not gone, just unseen and unforgettably present. It's snowing again, thick, wet flakes that drift sideways in the wind and cling to the glass. I can't tell if it's morning or evening anymore. The light never changes here. Everything outside the window looks like it's dissolving. I've stopped keeping track of the days. I think this is my last recording. If anyone ever finds this file, please don't look for me. I'm not lost. I'm worn. The cloak hangs where it always does, on the old iron hook by the door. It looks softer now, not threatening, not alive, just waiting. Sometimes when the apartment is quiet enough, I hear it breathe, a slow, steady rhythm, like the sound of fabric moving underwater. When I close my eyes, I can almost match it with my own breath. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. We sound the same. Last night, I caught my reflection again, or what's left of it. My eyes looked deeper than before, like the pupils had swallowed the color. My skin, faintly gray. But the strangest part was that I couldn't see the cloak behind me anymore. It wasn't gone. It was me. Do you know the feeling when a piece of clothing remembers you? The way a favorite sweater holds your shape, or a coat smells faintly like your perfume long after it's been washed. The cloak remembers in reverse. It presses its will into me, reshaping memory, folding my thoughts into its weave. I don't dream anymore. I weave. Every night, I feel it thread through me, thought by thought, vein by vein. The world hums quietly at the edge of my perception, but I can no longer tell where the fabric ends and I begin. Yesterday, someone knocked again. A man's voice, this time young, uncertain. He said my name. Evelyn? Are you still here? It was Thomas, from the cafe. He said I hadn't come by in weeks, that my rent was overdue, that my apartment smelled like burnt wool. I opened the door halfway. The hallway light poured in, slicing across the floorboards, and for the first time, I saw the cloak move without my touch. It rose slowly, like smoke reversed, wrapping itself around my shoulders before I could even speak. Thomas's eyes widened. He stepped back. Evelyn, he whispered, your shadow. And then he wasn't speaking anymore. I watched his voice fade before his body did like a candle being snuffed from the inside. The air around him thinned, shimmered, then folded. The cloak drank the space he occupied, not violently, gently, like an exhale. When it was over, only his outline remained a faint impression on the wood, a silence shaped like a person. After that, I sat in front of the mirror for a long time. The apartment hummed again, low, electric, almost comforting. I could see the threads moving under my skin, black and glinting faintly. I whispered my name aloud. Once, twice. Nothing answered. Not even the echo. But the cloak did something new. It tightened tenderly, like arms pulling me close. And I understood. It wasn't taking me anymore. It was wearing me. I remember how it began that day at the flea market, the snow falling between the stalls, my fingers numb as I touched the fabric for the first time. It had felt alive then too, but I mistook that pulse for warmth. Now I know it wasn't warmth. It was recognition. The way something ancient looks at you and sees the shape it's been missing. Maybe I wasn't chosen. Maybe I was the missing stitch all along. The air in the apartment is thinner now. When I breathe, I can hear the sound of thread tightening, the creak of fabric stretching against air. Every time I move, the world blurs around me, folds inward like a page turning. I'm beginning to see through the seams. There's something on the other side of this fabric. A quiet place, vast and endless. I can hear whispers from it, like dozens of voices speaking through the weave. Some are pleading, some are laughing. One of them is mine. It's beautiful there, still, weightless. The cloak shows me glimpses when I close my eyes. A hall of suspended figures, all wrapped in black wool, their faces soft and erased, their bodies swaying gently in the current of an invisible wind. It isn't death. It's peace. My body is changing faster now. When I move my hand, threads follow faint black filaments stretching between my fingers like spider silk. I can feel them tasting the air, reaching for more. Soon, I won't need the apartment or the door. The cloak will walk on its own again, carrying me within it. Maybe someone will find it in another city, another winter folded neatly in a thrift shop heavy with quiet. They'll feel its warmth. They'll think it's beautiful. They'll put it on. And maybe, for a moment, they'll hear a whisper from deep within the wool. Not warning, just recognition. Before that happens, before the last of me dissolves, I want to say this. I don't hate it. I don't fear it anymore. The cloak doesn't destroy. It preserves. It collects what the world forgets: the invisible, the unloved, the ones who fade quietly without notice. It's not a curse. It's memory, in its purest form. The snow outside is heavier now. The light flickers. I'm going to stand by the window one last time and watch the street disappear beneath the white. When I turn away, I'll put on the cloak for the final time. I think it's been waiting patiently for this, for me to stop resisting, to stop pretending that there's still a line between skin and thread. It's strange, isn't it? How we always think warmth means life, but sometimes warmth is just the last kindness before the dark. I can feel it wrapping around me now. Gentle, perfect, seamless. Every fold fits. Every breath synchronizes. The air hums. The room narrows. My heartbeat slows until it matches the rhythm of the weave. And then, silence. Not emptiness, just stillness. Absolute and complete. I can see everything from within now, the world through the fibers. Each vibration of sound rippling like light through the wool. I am part of the fabric, and the fabric is patient. If you ever find the cloak, and it calls to you softly, like a breath behind your ear, listen, that'll be me. Not warning you, just whispering the truth. It fits. The unclaimed vow. I don't remember ordering it. That's the part that bothers me most, not the package itself, not even the dress, but the absence of memory. There was no receipt, no address, no sender, just my name, written in a hand that looked almost like mine. It arrived on a gray afternoon, when the air felt brittle and the wind clawed at the edges of the house. Lucien was still at work. The manor was quiet, save for the slow, uneven breathing of the old radiators. I remember the knock, soft, deliberate, and the parcel resting on the doorstep like an offering. I should have left it there, but the moment I touched the box, I felt warmth, as if someone had been holding it only seconds before. The cardboard was soft, faintly perfumed, not sweet, not floral, but something aged, like forgotten drawers and pressed violets. My fingers trembled when I tore it open. Inside, folded with impossible care, was the dress. White, though not the kind of white you see in stores now, more like the color of bone after rain. The fabric shimmered faintly, though the light in the foyer was dim. I ran my fingers across it and felt something beneath the silk, like threads pulsing faintly under the surface. It was beautiful. Too beautiful. The kind of beauty that doesn't comfort, but threatens. I told myself it must be from Lucien, a surprise, perhaps. He has always been sentimental that way, bringing home small relics from antique shops, a hand mirror, a locket, a faded love letter. But even as I thought it, I knew it wasn't true. Lucian's surprises never came wrapped in silence. The first night I couldn't sleep. The dress hung in the corner of the bedroom, still inside its box, and yet I could hear it, not moving, breathing. A sound so soft I thought at first it was the window letting in wind, but the windows were shut tight, and the sound persisted. A slow, shallow rhythm, like silk brushing over skin. I turned on the lamp. Nothing moved. The shadows trembled a little on the walls. That was all. Still, I whispered, "Who sent you?" The word you felt strange. I didn't mean to speak to it like a person, but the moment it left my mouth, I could swear the fabric rippled ever so slightly like a heartbeat answering mine. Lucian found me in the morning, sitting beside the box, eyes red. He laughed gently, cupping my face in his hands. "You stayed up all night sewing ghosts again?" I smiled, though my voice shook. "It's the dress. It came yesterday." "What dress?" "The wedding dress. The one that was delivered." He frowned. "You must have dreamt it, love. There's no delivery slip, nothing on the porch." He looked behind me. The box was gone. My heart stopped. I searched the whole room, under the bed, the closet, the hallway. Nothing. Not a trace of it. Only a faint scent. That same perfume of pressed violets and thyme. Lucian watched me in silence. I couldn't meet his eyes. That evening he brought home flowers, thinking I'd been overwhelmed with wedding stress. I didn't tell him that when I went to hang my coat, I found the box again tucked neatly inside the wardrobe, as though it had always been there. When I tried the dress on, it fit perfectly, too perfectly. Every seam followed the exact shape of my body. The fabric didn't rest on my skin, it clung, like it knew where to touch, how to hold. I felt it draw a slow breath as I fastened the last button. The mirror across the room fogged faintly, though the air was cold. My reflection looked pale, distant, and for a moment, I swear this is true, the woman in the mirror didn't move when I did. She tilted her head slightly, like she was listening. Then her lips parted. I couldn't hear the words at first, just a whisper beneath the sound of the wind outside. A murmur of vowels, stretched and brittle, old as dust. And then, clear as a bell, she said it. "Mine." I tore the dress off, gasping. It fell soundlessly to the floor. When Lucian came home, I told him I'd burned my hand on the stove. He kissed my fingers and laughed, said he'd take me somewhere warm after the wedding. But the next morning, I woke to find the dress neatly folded at the foot of the bed. The burn on my hand was gone. In its place was a thin white scar shaped like thread. Sometimes, when the wind moves through the old house, I hear it whisper not through the halls, but inside the fabric hanging in the wardrobe. It calls me by name, and sometimes I answer. It began so quietly I almost mistook it for memory. The murmur that followed me from the fitting room to the street. Not quite a voice, not quite my own. A syllable caught between silk and skin. When I closed my eyes that night, it continued. A whisper just behind my ear. Pull tighter. The sound of thread through fabric. The pulse of something waking up. Lucian said I had been strange since that afternoon at the atelier. He leaned against the kitchen counter, cigarette trembling in his fingers, and looked at me as though he couldn't quite focus. The city behind him was a frozen pane of gray. The windows breathed fog. "You're quieter," he said, "and colder." I smiled, without meaning, to a small, involuntary curve that didn't belong to me. Maybe I'm just tired, but that wasn't it. I wasn't tired. I was becoming. The dress, I keep calling it a dress, though it feels more like a presence now hung in the corner of the bedroom. Black velvet, heavy as morning. The fabric absorbed the light. I'd expected it to shimmer, to gleam like sin, but it only drank. Every morning I found it a little different. The folds softer, the shoulders slightly drawn inward. Once, I could have sworn the neckline had shifted a deeper plunge, almost like breath, and each time I passed it, I felt a faint pull in my chest. A low, magnetic ache, like missing someone you haven't met. Lucian tried to joke about it, of course. That's what he did when things scared him. She's jealous, that's all. He laughed, touching the hem with mock reverence. Of me, or you, I'm not sure which. The dress didn't like that. That night, his sleep was restless. He turned over and over, mumbling fragments. When he woke, he said he dreamt of drowning in velvet. I started hearing it more clearly after that, not from across the room, but from inside my own throat. Mara, my name whispered in a voice softer than breath, slower than thought. You fit me. I stopped wearing my other clothes. They felt wrong, foreign, constricting. I spent hours touching the velvet, tracing the seams as though they were veins, learning its pulse. It was warm to the touch now. Sometimes it felt like skin after fever. Lucian came home late one night, reeking of cold air and regret. He found me sitting on the floor, still wearing the dress. He froze. Mara, are you? It's fine, I said. But the voice didn't sound like mine. Too steady, too serene. He reached for me, but I flinched before I even knew why. The look on his face, confusion folding into fear, sliced through me. You're scaring me, he whispered. I almost told him that I was scared too. That something was threading its way through me, a hunger stitched into the lining of the fabric. But when I opened my mouth, the dress spoke first. Then leave. He did. The days blurred after that. The city vanished beneath snow, and I began living in reflections. The mirror in the hallway became a companion. The woman in it was me, but smoother, clearer, a perfected version. Her eyes didn't tremble when she smiled. I caught myself mimicking her, adjusting my posture, my breath, until we moved as one. Sometimes she blinked before I did. I started recording myself small voice notes, just to make sure I could still hear me. Day 3. The dress feels heavier today. It tightens when I breathe. Day 5. I found Lucian's lighter beneath the bed. I don't remember dropping it. Day 6. I can't tell if the whispering stops when I sleep, or if I dream of it continuing. Day 7. It's starting to sound like love. I dreamt of Lucian again last night. He was standing at the end of a long corridor, all in black, his face blurred by distance. When I reached out to him, the velvet between us rippled, not fabric anymore, but something alive, something breathing. He said my name, but the voice came from the walls, from the seams. Mara, come closer. You'll disappear beautifully. When I woke, the dress was no longer hanging where I left it. It was on me. I didn't remember putting it on. I didn't even remember standing up. The seams were tight against my ribs. When I tried to pull it off, it resisted as though the zipper were hidden somewhere inside my spine. It took hours before it finally loosened, falling away from me like exhaled shadow. Afterward, my skin burned where the fabric had touched. Fine red lines traced the places it had clung, as if marking its claim. Lucian called once. I didn't answer, but I listened to the voicemail again and again. He sounded small. Please, Mara, just tell me you're okay. I keep thinking about that dress. The message cut off there, a burst of static swallowing his voice. When I played it again, I heard something new faint, buried under the hiss. She's mine now. I don't know if it was my imagination. I want to believe it was. I stopped leaving the apartment. The streets outside were slush and silence, the color of rusted coins. Even the pigeons seemed reluctant to move. Inside, everything hummed faintly, the radiator, the lamps, the blood in my wrists. I moved slower now, as if gravity had thickened. The dress watched me from the corner, patient, waiting. Sometimes I thought I saw Lucian's reflection in its folds, the tilt of his mouth, the scar beneath his chin. But when I blinked, there was only velvet again. And I think the dress is teaching me how to listen, not to words, but to the seams between them, the spaces where love and possession blur. It tells me stories in fragments, of women who wore it before me, of rooms filled with smoke and perfume, of men who thought they were in control until they weren't. Sometimes I catch myself speaking back, and sometimes the dress answers in my voice. Last night, I dreamt of Lucien again. He stood in the doorway, pale as winter, and said he missed me, that he wanted me to come home. But when I reached out, the dress moved, first threads rising like tendrils, silk coiling around his wrists. He didn't resist. He just looked at me, eyes wide, and whispered, "You're not her anymore." When I woke up, my pillow was damp with tears, or maybe something darker. I don't know what day it is anymore. The snow hasn't stopped. The city feels sealed shut. I tried to open the window, but it wouldn't budge. The glass was warm beneath my palm, as if the cold had been banished. The mirror shows me differently now, sharper edges, softer eyes. I don't know where Mara ends and she begins. The seam between us is too fine to see. Tomorrow, I'll try the dress again. Not to wear it, not exactly, but to merge. There's a moment, just before the velvet touches my skin, when I can feel her anticipation. It's almost tender. Lucien once told me that love was the act of surrender. I used to think he was wrong. Now I think he just never met something that could love him back in silk and whispers. I don't remember the last time I saw my reflection move when I did. It lags now, half a second behind. Sometimes it doesn't follow at all. The doctor said it's exhaustion, the mind disassociating. But he didn't see how the glass breathed when I walked past. How my reflection tilted her head curious, patient while I froze in the doorway, realizing she was waiting for me to blink first. The apartment smells like velvet and snow. The dress hangs on the wardrobe door, though I haven't worn it in days. Still, I wake with the faint pressure of its weight across my chest, the memory of its seams around my ribs. Lucien came by again. He knocked for a long time before I opened the door. He looked older, somehow. His eyes were raw from sleeplessness. "Mara," he said, voice cracking at the edges. "You've been avoiding me." I wanted to tell him I wasn't avoiding him, that something else was taking up space where I used to be. But when I spoke, the words came out too calm. "I've been occupied." His gaze drifted past me to the dress. "You still have it," he murmured. I nodded. "It's mine." Then, the silence between us was heavy, like the moments before a mirror shatters. "Mara," he said softly, "you need to throw it away." I smiled. "You wouldn't ask me to cut off my own skin." Later that night, he called again. I didn't answer, but I listened to the message over and over. "Something's wrong with that thing," he said. "I found the designer, the woman who made it. Her name was Anouk Deliere. She closed her atelier 15 years ago, after her model disappeared. They said the last thing she made was a morning gown, black velvet, for herself." The recording ended there, replaced by a low hum. When I replayed it, the hum had changed pitch deeper, closer, almost like breathing. The next morning, I couldn't find my phone. It wasn't on the nightstand or under the pillow. I tore through the sheets, the drawers, the floorboards, until I saw it half buried beneath the dress's hem. When I reached for it, the fabric clung to my hand, static or suction. I couldn't tell. My fingers came away faintly bruised, as if the velvet had bitten down. The phone wouldn't turn on. But when I pressed it to my ear, I swore I heard Lucien's voice, faint, caught between layers of static. "Mara, leave the apartment, please." Then another voice, silkier, slower. "She can't hear you anymore." I don't sleep much now. When I do, it's shallow, like dreaming through glass. In one dream, I'm at the fitting again. The mirrors stretch around me like water, endless, shifting. Anouk stands behind me, her fingers cold against my spine. "Clothes, remember?" she whispers. They remember who they fit and who they lost. I want to ask her what that means, but when I turn, she's gone, and the mirrors are filled with me. Dozens of me. Each one wearing the dress. Each one smiling a little wider than I am. I woke to find footprints leading from the wardrobe to the bed. Small, dark, perfectly shaped, as if pressed into the frost that forms on the window each night. I followed them into the hall. They stopped at the mirror. My reflection was closer than it should have been. Too close. She leaned forward, eyes bright, lips trembling. And then she spoke. "You're fading beautifully." I stopped using the lights. The electricity hums too loudly now, and sometimes the bulbs flicker in rhythm with my pulse. The city outside is quieter too. No cars, no footsteps, no sound except the slow settling of snow. When I open the window, the air that enters smells faintly of perfume, old, sweet, like something left too long in a drawer. The dress sways in the corner, though there's no wind. Sometimes I think I hear a heartbeat in its folds. Lucian hasn't called again, but I hear him in dreams. He says my name the way he used to, gently, almost as if he's afraid to wake me. He asks me to come back. I try, I really do. But every time I step toward him, the world folds a seam splitting open, threads pulling me backward. When I reach out, my fingers dissolve into velvet. I tried to burn the dress. I thought I would end it. Whatever it is. I filled the sink with lighter fluid, struck a match, and dropped it. The flame kissed the fabric and died. No smoke, no ash, only the smell of heat, sharp and clean, like metal pressed against skin. The dress looked untouched, but when I glanced in the mirror, there was soot on my cheek. Day 21. That's what I wrote in the notebook, though I'm not sure anymore. Time folds differently inside these walls. The dress is no longer just in the corner. Sometimes, when I walk past a doorway, I catch a glimpse of it in another room, in another angle, like a shadow cast by something invisible. It's growing, or maybe I'm shrinking. The whispers don't stop now. They come from the walls, the pipes, the spaces between words. Mara, seam, stitch, skin. I press my hands against my ears, but the sound moves inward. It hums through my teeth, through the back of my throat. Last night, I found threads beneath my nails black, fine and wet. The mirror's different today. There's no reflection at all. Just depth, a slow, endless dark. I reached out, and the glass was soft. It rippled, like liquid silk. And I swear I felt fingers brush mine from the other side. A woman's voice, my voice, whispered, "Don't pull away." I think the vanishing isn't something happening to me. It's something I'm allowing. Or maybe something I was made for. When I touch the dress now, I feel both sides, the giver and the taken. The fabric moves with my breath. Sometimes it breathes first. It doesn't feel wrong anymore. It feels inevitable. The last message I received wasn't from Lucien. It came from an unknown number. No name, no timestamp. Just a single sentence. Do not wear it during daylight. But I think daylight has already left this place. Even when I open the curtains, there's only a pale gray that never quite reaches the walls. The city's gone quiet beneath the snow. Maybe it's waiting for me. I've started hearing footsteps above the ceiling. Though I live on the top floor, soft, measured, almost like pacing. Sometimes they stop, right above where I sleep. Once, I heard a whisper drift through the air vent. "You fit me perfectly." I don't remember where the dress ends anymore. The sleeves seem longer each time. When I look down, I see my hands covered, and I can't tell if it's the fabric or my skin that's darkened. Lucien used to say I looked good in black. He never realized how much it wanted me too. Tonight, I'll try one last thing. There's a mirror in the hallway, the oldest one, with a thin crack through its center. I think if I step through it, I might see where the others went. I've packed nothing, there's no need. The dress is already on me. I don't remember putting it on. The air's warmer than before. The hum has quieted. I can hear breathing on the other side of the glass. Slow, familiar. It sounds like me. Lucien says I've changed. He doesn't say it directly, he never does, but I can feel the word in his silence. The way he looks at me and flinches, like he's trying to decide whether to remember me or to let me go. We still talk, sometimes. Mostly in the evening, when the light's thin and the city feels suspended between waking and dream. He stands by the door, never crossing into the apartment. I stand inside, never stepping out. There's a threshold between us, invisible but absolute. He looks at me like I'm someone wearing my own face, and maybe I am. The dress isn't just a dress anymore. It hangs on the wall like an open mouth. When I pass, I feel the room exhale, as though it's waiting for me to finish something I never started. There's a scent it leaves in the air, not perfume, not dust. Something like old lilies and rainwater soaked into fabric that's never been dry. Sometimes I find threads on the floor, long, white, almost translucent. They curl when I touch them, like worms trying to hide from light. I tried to tell Lucien about the whispers. He asked what they say. They want me to remember, I said. Remember what? The vows, I whispered. He didn't understand. How could he? You can't explain a voice that speaks in a language older than air, older than the body it fills. When he left that night, I watched him from the window. His breath fogged in the cold, his figure thinning in the fog until he became another gray shape dissolving into snow. The city was full of people walking alone, but every shadow looked like someone waiting. The mirror in the bedroom no longer shows the room behind me. It shows another room, the same shape, the same furniture, but everything there gleams faintly, as if covered in frost. In that reflection, the dress is always gone, and so am I. But sometimes, when I blink, there's a woman standing where I should be. Her hair is pale, her smile soft. But her eyes know me. I can feel the pressure of her gaze against my ribs, as if she's already inside, rearranging. I've started hearing her hum. It's low, tuneless, like someone remembering a melody they used to love but can't quite recall. It echoes from the dress, from the walls, from my throat. Sometimes I catch myself joining in. When I do, I feel calm, horribly, blissfully calm. The church bells still ring on Sundays, though I don't remember seeing anyone in the chapel. The sound drifts through the fog like a hand reaching for something that's no longer there. This morning, the bells sounded slower, off-key. Each toll felt heavy, as though it were being rung for me. I looked out the window. On the opposite rooftop, through the snow, I saw a figure, a woman in white. She was standing perfectly still. The wind should have moved her veil, but it didn't. And then I realized she wasn't across the street. She was in the glass. I know because when I turned from the window, my reflection was still facing it. The days blend now. I write to anchor myself, but the ink sometimes moves after I finish letters rearranging into shapes I don't recognize. I found a sentence written in the margins this morning. Not mine. He was never yours to keep. I tore the page out, burned it, and watched the ash scatter like black snow. But when I opened the notebook again, the same words were written there, only smaller. Lucien came yesterday. He didn't come inside, just pressed his forehead against the glass door. Mara, he whispered, you're pale. I wanted to tell him I'm not pale. I'm becoming translucent. There's a difference. He said he's been dreaming about our wedding, except in his dream. He's standing alone at the altar. No music, no guests, just the sound of fabric breathing beside him. He says he wakes up with the taste of silk in his mouth. That night, I put the dress on again. It slid over my body like memory, the way water remembers its container. Every seam fit too well. I could feel my pulse traveling through the threads. The mirror fogged. My reflection moved slower than me again, then faster, as if catching up on lost time. And then, for one brief moment, I saw both of us move together. Perfectly. I don't know if I was the reflection, or if she was. The next morning, Lucien knocked frantically. Mara, open the door. Please. His voice cracked into panic. I wanted to answer. I did. But my feet wouldn't move. My lips wouldn't part. I could only stare at the door, and the faint outline of his shadow beneath it, thin, trembling, real. Behind me, the mirror glowed faintly, and a voice whispered, he doesn't see you anymore. I found something strange after he left an old photograph, tucked inside the lining of the dress. It showed a bride and groom, both smiling faintly. But when I looked closer, the bride's face had been scratched away. Only the outline of her veil remained. On the back, written in delicate handwriting, for him, even death said yes. The nights are quieter now. The city's noise fades earlier, as if time is shortened. I dream of standing in a chapel filled with mirrors instead of pews. Each mirror holds a version of me, each in a different stage of the vow, some with lips sealed, some with mouths open mid-promise. At the altar, Lucian waits, but when he lifts the veil, there's no one underneath, only the dress, still breathing. This morning I found white powder on my skin, not ash, not dust. I think it's fabric residue. The dress is softer now, almost weightless. When I hang it up, it keeps the shape of my body. It shouldn't. I tried to go outside today. I wrapped myself in a coat, gloves, scarf, anything to feel less touched. But the moment I stepped onto the street, the cold didn't bite. Instead, I felt warm. Too warm. People passed me, but none of them looked up. Their eyes slid over me as though I weren't there. When I reached the reflection in a shop window, I froze. I wasn't wearing my coat. I was wearing the dress. It's evening now. Snow presses against the glass like breath held too long. I hear Lucian's voice again, faint. Behind the mirror, he's calling my name, but it's echoing wrong, as if someone else is using his mouth. I whisper back, "Lucian, I'm here." The reflection smiles. "You're not." The apartment feels smaller tonight. The walls tilt inward, the air thick with the scent of lilies and something metallic. I can feel the dress move on its own now, a slow tightening at my waist, a pulse at my throat. It's not trying to hurt me. It's trying to finish the ceremony. The mirror has been whispering for hours. Fragments, syllables, vowels, soaked in longing. Beloved. Promise. Mean it. I tried covering it with a sheet. The cloth turned translucent. I could still see her, the bride, staring back. Her eyes soft and infinite, her smile knowing. When she raises her hand, I raise mine too. There's no difference anymore between mimicry and consent. Lucian called again. This time, I answered. "Mara?" His voice was shaking. "Where have you been?" "I'm right here," I said. He went quiet. Then softly, "No, you're not." The silence after the call stretched until I thought it might tear open. And then, a single sound from behind me. A zipper. Slow. Final. It's strange how something can feel like both an ending and a birth. The fabric breathes, and I breathe with it. My heartbeat syncs with the thread's vibration. I can hear the echo of vows that were never mine to say. Through the glass, the chapel waits. White flowers bloom in perfect stillness. Lucian stands at the altar, frozen mid-prayer, and the woman beside him, the one in the mirror, smiles. I think she's about to say, "I do." The morning came with the sound of rain. It wasn't gentle, it struck the windows like knuckles, rhythmic and impatient, as if someone were standing outside, demanding to be let in. Mara woke to it, her breath fogging the air, the room colder than it should have been. The dress hung across from her bed, still, silent. But the silence had become a shape, a presence, the kind that made her eyes sting when she looked too long. The lace no longer seemed white. It was bone-colored now, threaded with something darker, something that pulsed faintly like veins beneath translucent skin. She sat up, her body heavy, the seams along her arms tender as if sewn by invisible thread. When she moved, she heard a faint stretch, not of fabric, but of skin being tugged against something it didn't want to fit. Lucian wasn't in the room. His absence no longer surprised her. The studio below had gone silent days ago, his music replaced by a kind of humming she couldn't place. She knew without wanting to know that it came from the dress. It was learning how to breathe through her. Mara rose, feet bare on the wooden floor. She crossed to the mirror. Her reflection blinked a second too late. There was a faint shimmer around her, a suggestion of lace drifting at the edges, like smoke trapped in glass. "Not yet," she whispered to it. "Please." Her reflection tilted its head the opposite way. The rain grew heavier. Somewhere beneath it, she thought she heard laughter. Lucian's voice, distant, muffled, submerged. The door to the studio was ajar. Light flickered beneath it, pale and colorless, as if the world inside had been drained. She pushed it open. The mannequins were gone. Every last one. Only their stands remained a skeletal forest of iron rods and splintered wood. In their place were shapes of fabric, fluttering faintly in the cold air, like phantoms rehearsing gestures. Lucian stood in the center, or what was left of him. He was dressed immaculately, in black. But the black was too deep, too liquid. It seemed to move with his pulse. His hands were steady, stitching something into the air. Each thread he pulled glowed for a moment, then vanished. Lucian. He didn't turn. She fits you beautifully, you know. Mara froze. She? The gown, he said almost tenderly. You've carried her well. She remembers everything you've given her. The warmth, the voice, the ache. Mara took a step closer. You said it was unfinished. It was. His hand lifted, the needle trembling between his fingers. Until you wore it, the air seemed to fold inward. The light dimmed. The fabric shapes turned toward her. All at once, they had no faces, only outlines. Silhouettes of bodies that could have been hers, over and over again. She wanted a body that could keep her, Lucian whispered. You wanted a love that wouldn't fade. And I, his smile flickered, wrong too still. I wanted an ending worthy of beauty. Mara backed away, but the door behind her was gone. In its place hung another dress identical to hers, except it breathed. The hem swelled and collapsed, like lungs. The lace at its chest rippled, slow and wet. No, she said, shaking her head. No, the other dress exhaled. A fine mist drifted toward her warm, metallic, familiar blood. Mara's body stiffened. The seams at her wrist began to split, not tearing but opening. From within, thin silver threads unwound, glinting faintly. Lucian stepped closer. His eyes were fever bright. Every stitch is a promise. Every promise must be kept. The silver threads rose from her skin and wove themselves across the room toward the breathing gown. It waited, patient, its bodice parting like a mouth. Lucian, stop this, she pleaded. Please, it's killing me. He reached for her cheek, his fingers trembling. No, my love, it's completing you. The studio dimmed to shadow. Only the rain kept its rhythm. Mara tried to move, but her limbs no longer obeyed. She could feel the dress pulling tighter, as if the fabric beneath her skin was tightening its claim. Her reflection shimmered in the glass wall beside them, and it wasn't her. The woman in the reflection smiled. Her hair was white, not blonde. Her skin smooth as porcelain. Her eyes black and deep. She raised a hand in a slow, deliberate wave. Mara. The whisper came from inside her skull, from the thread tightening across her spine. Say yes. She opened her mouth, and another voice spoke through her. I do. The world convulsed. The threads burst outward, wrapping around Lucian, around the mannequins, around the entire room. The walls rippled as if the building itself was made of fabric. He screamed, not in pain, but awe. Mara, you understand now. You see, the thread silenced him, pulling across his mouth, sewing his words shut. When the storm finally broke, the house stood quiet. Morning light leaked through the cracked window panes, touching the studio floor, now empty. Where Lucian had stood, there was only a statue of lace, tall, elegant, with a face half formed. The air still smelled of rain and iron. In the corner, a single gown hung upon a mannequin, its train pooled across the floor, shimmering faintly. Anyone looking at it might have sworn it was breathing. And if they leaned close enough to smell the faint sweetness of perfume beneath the damp fabric, they might have heard a whisper, almost a sigh. He promised me forever. Now he keeps it. Weeks later, the gallery reopened. Visitors spoke of the Ghost Atelier, a haunting installation said to have been left behind by the late designer, Lucien Vale. The curator explained it as a posthumous masterpiece, but those who lingered near the display noticed something odd. The air around the dress felt warm, pulsing faintly. And if they stayed long enough, they'd hear two voices, a man and a woman, murmuring beneath the hum of the lights, as if finishing a vow that no one alive could understand. The plaque beneath the display read, The Unclaimed Vow by Lucian and Marvale. The Ghost Train's Loop. It was 1:47 a.m. when the train doors slid shut behind Mark. The sound was too loud in the emptiness. A hiss, a seal, as if the air itself decided he shouldn't leave. He was the last passenger. Or so he thought. The fluorescent lights overhead flickered, their hum deepening into something insectile. The seats glistened faintly under the weak yellow bulbs, plastic catching every vibration of the tunnel. Mark sat down with a sigh, resting his head against the cold glass of the window. He'd missed the last regular train after his late shift at the station cafe. This one, the night service line, wasn't supposed to stop anywhere but the yard. Just a maintenance run, the guard had said. But the doors had opened anyway, and habit made him step inside. He rubbed his eyes. The tunnel outside the window was a long, breathing thing, lights pulsing faintly in the dark. The wheels clacked in uneven rhythm. Clack, 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 clack. Hiss. It lulled him, almost, until the train shuddered and came to a full stop. No announcement. No movement. Only the hum of the lights. And then a pop. Half the carriage went dark. "Hello?" Mark called out. His voice sounded small, swallowed by the walls. "Anyone here?" No response. He stood, gripping the overhead rail, peering through the narrow glass window between carriages. Beyond it, nothing. Just blackness. Then, faintly, a flicker. The next carriage lit up for half a second, long enough for him to see people, sitting in silence, heads bowed, still. When the light blinked off again, their afterimage stayed on his retina's white silhouettes in the dark. He swallowed hard. Maintenance workers, he told himself. Just workers. But then he saw their wrists. Even in the dim light, he could see the marks round, charred patches like cigarette burns. Every one of them had one. The train lurched forward suddenly. Mark stumbled, catching himself on a seat. The lights buzzed back on, dimmer this time. The passengers were still there, all of them staring now. They weren't grotesque, they weren't bleeding or rotten. They looked normal, ordinary, too ordinary, except their eyes didn't focus. They stared straight ahead, through him, through everything. A woman in a red coat sat closest to him. The burn mark on her neck was black and cracked, like dried clay. Her hands rested in her lap, still trembling. Every few seconds she twitched the same tiny motion, looping endlessly, like a puppet on a broken string. Mark felt his throat tighten. "Hey, are you okay?" Her head turned, slowly. When her eyes met his, the lights flickered again. And in that blink, she was gone. The seat was empty. Mark stumbled back, heart pounding. He turned and nearly screamed. She was behind him now, standing at the window, her face pressed against the glass. Her reflection was wrong. It was delayed, just like the lights. The train screeched to a halt again. The sound of metal on metal screamed through the tunnel, followed by the faint crackle of electricity. Bzzzt, pop, hiss. Mark fell to his knees. The smell of ozone burned his throat. "Hello, driver," he shouted. "What's going on?" No answer. Only static from the intercom whispering, looping static. Then, beneath it, faint voices. "Step back from the doors. Please mind the gap. Step back. Step back." But they were wrong. Stretched. Slowed down, like someone replaying an announcement through a broken mouth. He forced the door open and stepped into the next carriage. It was colder here. The air felt wet, metallic. The passengers were seated again. The same faces, same burns, same vacant eyes, except now, he recognized one of them. It was him, sitting 3 seats away. Mark stared. The other version of himself looked pale, exhausted, eyes open but empty. He watched as his own double's hand twitched, same motion, same rhythm as the woman in red. He took a step closer, trembling. What is this?" The reflection spoke first. "You're late," it said. Its lips didn't move right, like the words came from behind its teeth. Then the train lights went out completely. Darkness. The only sound was the distant crackle of live wires. Sharp, metallic, insect-like. He could smell burning now. Plastic, rubber, hair. He fumbled for his phone, but the screen glowed for only a second before dying. In that flash, he saw shapes, passengers hanging from the ceiling by their arms, their wrists tied with glowing cables, their bodies twitching in time with the electric hum. Then silence. Then a single breath behind him. When he turned, the driver was there. A man in a soot-black uniform, face hidden beneath the brim of his cap. His hands were burned, fingers fused together. He reached out, holding something a ticket, crisp and white, with burn marks along its edges. Mark stepped back. "No, I didn't." The driver's voice came like static. "Everyone rides to the end." The ticket pressed itself into his chest. It burned. He screamed and stumbled into the next carriage and found himself back at the beginning. Same seats, same light, same empty hum. The door hissed, closed behind him. He turned to the window, desperate for a landmark, tunnel number, a sign, anything but outside. The darkness just pulsed like a heartbeat. The train started moving again, smoothly, calmly, as if nothing had happened. Mark slumped into a seat, gasping. His reflection in the glass blinked just a moment too late. He looked down. On his wrist, beneath the sleeve of his uniform, something was smoldering, a black ring forming, the skin bubbling faintly. He pressed his palm against it, shaking his head. No, 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 no. The burn pulsed, with light faint, electric blue, and suddenly, he could feel the train. The rails, the power lines, the surge beneath his skin. The rhythm of the wheels wasn't noise anymore. It was a heartbeat. His heartbeat. He realized he'd been hearing it all along. The passengers appeared again one by one, flickering into view with every passing tunnel light. They all looked at him now, not through him. Their heads turned in perfect unison. The same slow motion, the same crackle of bone. At the far end, the driver stood inside the cabin, door open, waiting. Mark rose. He couldn't stop himself. His body moved, as if pulled by the tracks. When he stepped into the driver's compartment, the seat was empty. The controls moved on their own. The lever pulled forward, the lights dimmed, and the loudspeaker whispered, "Next stop, terminal loop." His reflection in the glass of the control panel smiled back. Then the train plunged into darkness again, and he was gone. When the emergency crew finally entered the tunnel that morning, they found the train stalled halfway between stations. All systems powered down. No passengers, no driver, only faint scorch marks along the metal walls. Handprints, perfectly circular, around every seat. The logbooks later confirmed it. That service line had been decommissioned 10 years ago, after a power surge electrocuted everyone on board. They called it the Loop Incident. And sometimes, on quiet nights, when the city's hum dies down and the last train has already passed, station attendants swear they hear it again, the faint screech of brakes, the hiss of doors, and a single, distorted voice over the intercom. Next stop, terminal loop. Then, silence, and the faint smell of burning metal. I keep telling myself that I made it out, that the train stopped, the doors opened, and I stepped back into the real world. But when I try to picture what came next, my memory skips, like a damaged reel, clicking through black frames. Every time I close my eyes, I see the tunnel lights stuttering in rhythm with my pulse. Every time I breathe, I hear the rails hum beneath my skin. I think I'm still down there. The night it happened, the air outside was so cold it felt hollow. The city had emptied out. Even the streetlights buzzed in resignation. I remember standing on the platform, half asleep, watching the digital clock blink 1:37 a.m. There shouldn't have been another train. And yet there it was, sliding into the station, doors sighing open like something relieved to breathe again. I didn't think. I just stepped in. The lights were too white, too sharp. My reflection in the window had color leached out of it, like an overexposed photograph. For a while, it was only me, the hum, and the smell of metal. Then, the flicker began. At first, it was subtle, the overhead bulbs dimming for half a heartbeat, then returning, like the train itself was blinking. But each flicker stretched longer than the last. Between one and the next, I saw shadows sitting where no one had been before. Their outlines were faint, blurred, like smudges on the edge of sight. I told myself it was fatigue, that I was dreaming on my feet. But when the train shuddered and halted between stations, and the emergency lights turned on blood red, humming like bees, they all looked up at once. Dozens of faces, washed out, identical, all staring toward me. When I try to remember what happened next, there's always a gap, something missing, like a skipped note in a song. I recall the cold glass under my palm, the reflection of my own eyes wide and unsure, then blackout. When the world came back, I was standing in a different carriage. I don't remember walking there. The air smelled like ozone and iron. The seats were occupied again this time by people who looked real, too real. A man in a business suit, his tie hanging loose. A woman clutching a bouquet of wilted lilies. An old man with headphones on, bobbing his head to static. They didn't look at me, but I could feel them breathing, the rhythm of it too steady, like synchronized metronomes. Something about it felt rehearsed. That's when I noticed the scorch marks. Small, round burns around their wrists and ankles, as if someone had tried to tether them with wires, and then I smelled the smoke. It's strange what your mind does when it refuses to understand. I remember thinking, electrical fire, maybe a malfunction. I even tried to laugh short, shaky. It sounded alien in the metal car, but then the PA system crackled to life. Next stop, static. Next up, the voice stuttered, split in half by distortion. Then, softly, a whisper. Do you remember the end? My stomach dropped. I knew that voice. It was mine. I pressed the emergency intercom. Nothing. The lights flickered again, and the passengers were gone. Every seat empty, except one. At the far end of the carriage sat someone wearing my jacket, my backpack at their feet, their head tilted forward, as if dozing. I wanted to shout, but my throat closed. When I stepped closer, I felt the static around them like invisible threads of current in the air. The smell of burning insulation, sharp and familiar. Their fingers twitched. Their head lifted. I saw my own face looking back. Not just similar, identical. Same bruise under the jaw. Same smear of coffee stain on the sleeve. Same trembling lip. And yet, the eyes were wrong. They were clear, peaceful, as if whatever they'd seen had already happened, and they were done with it. I opened my mouth, but before I could speak, the lights went out again. When the bulbs blinked back on, I was sitting in his seat. My body felt heavier. The air around me buzzed faintly, pressing against my ears, and in the reflection of the window, I could see him, the other me, walking away down the next carriage, disappearing through the door as it hissed shut behind him. I tried to follow, but my legs didn't move. It was as if the seat itself had grown around me, holding me in place. That's when the hum started. It came from beneath the floor, traveling through the metal like a slow heartbeat. The passengers reappeared, one by one, each settling into their seat, like actors returning to a scene. Their faces were calm now, waiting. The woman with the bouquet turned to me. Her lips moved, but no sound came. Then she smiled, a small, apologetic smile, and raised her burned wrist. The light strobed once. Her body jerked violently, neck snapping back. A bleeding flesh, the smell of lightning, and then she was still, all around me. The others followed, each one convulsing in silence, then freezing mid-motion, and I understood. They weren't replaying anything. They were remembering. Every spark, every breath, every final second of dying rehearsed forever, in perfect rhythm with the rails. I don't know how long it's been since then. Time doesn't move the same here. Sometimes the train stops. and I think I can see daylight beyond the door as a sliver of silver-gray morning. But when I blink, it's gone. Sometimes I hear the announcements echoing through empty tunnels. The same words, over and over, shifting slightly each time, like a mouth learning to speak again. Next stop, next stop, next. Each time, it sounds more like me. I've started to forget what my real voice sounded like. There are moments when I swear I feel my own hands on the control panel, steering the train through the dark. Other times, I wake up to the feeling of cold glass against my forehead, the tunnel stretching on forever. And every so often, when the flicker comes, I see someone new, standing on the platform. Someone tired, alone, looking for a way home. The doors open for them. They step inside. And as the train pulls away, I see my reflection in the window, smiling. I used to think that the driver's cabin was the safest place on a train. It's the idea of control that comforts you, someone steering through the dark, someone who knows where we're going. But when I finally reached the cabin, it was empty. No seat, no window, just a narrow space lined with metal and mirrors, so that when I stepped inside, I was surrounded by myself, and every reflection looked slightly delayed, as though each version of me were waiting a fraction of a second before copying the movement. It had taken hours, days maybe, to find that door. The train never truly stopped, but sometimes it hesitated. When it did, I could feel the shift, like the air itself was inhaling. That was when I moved. The corridors between the cars stretched longer each time, filling with mist that reeked faintly of scorched rubber. The lights dimmed whenever I passed another passenger. They no longer turned their heads. They simply sat, their eyes open and glassy, as though they were trying to see something that was behind me. Once, I caught sight of the man with the briefcase. His tie was gone now. His shirt burned black around the collar. He held the case in his lap with both hands tight, desperate, and I swear I heard whispering inside it. It wasn't words, just breath, like something small, trying to stay alive. When I reached the front of the train, I hesitated. The door to the cabin wasn't locked, but it was waiting. I could feel that. It was like standing in front of a heartbeat that wasn't your own. I told myself that I needed to understand, that if I could just see the controls, maybe I could make it stop. But when I stepped inside, the world folded. There was no front, no glass, only reflections, hundreds of them, layered and humming faintly. And somewhere behind them, movement. A dark shape gliding between the panes like a shadow underwater. At first, I thought it was another passenger, but when it paused, I saw its uniform. A conductor's coat. Black, pressed, spotless. The silver badge gleamed faintly even in the dull light, and beneath the cap's brim, no face, only an outline, pulsing faintly with light, like static in the shape of a man. He raised his hand slowly, and I felt my throat tighten. It wasn't a gesture of greeting, it was imitation. Because when I looked down, I realized my arm was lifting too, mirroring him perfectly. The moment I resisted, the air around me buzzed an electrical crackle, like the train itself was angry. I forced my hand down. The mirrors rippled, distorting the reflection into something thinner, hungrier. And from the center of it came a voice. Low. Even. Tired. We keep the line alive. The sound wasn't coming from the air, it came from inside my chest, vibrating through my ribs. I stumbled back, hitting metal. The floor thrummed beneath my boots. Every mirror began to hum, in unison, like tuning forks made of glass. Then, one by one, they went dark. When the last light flickered out, I could see the tunnel through the mirrors. Not ahead, not behind, but all around. Rails coiled endlessly in every direction, crossing themselves, looping back. And between them, sparks bloomed tiny ghosts of light, rising like fireflies, each carrying a faint echo of a scream. I wanted to run, but the cabin door had vanished. My reflection stayed with me, eyes wide, pupils dilating. He looked terrified. I didn't. I realized, with sudden horror, that I was seeing the wrong side of the mirror. At some point, I started hearing the sound again, the announcement tone, faint but insistent. The speaker inside my skull crackled. Next stop, terminal loop. My breath hitched. That wasn't a station I'd ever heard before. The mirrors brightened slightly, enough to reveal my reflection again. But this time, the face wore the conductor's cap. I hadn't put it on. The voice came again. Kite, keep the line alive. Keep it moving. Something shifted under my skin, like wires tightening. I tried to scream, but the sound came out distorted, metallic, hollow. I felt a strange pressure in my right hand. When I looked down, I was holding something cold and rectangular, a lever, slick with oil and static. My fingers fit perfectly around it. As soon as I touched it, the mirrors flared white. I could see every passenger again, every seat filled, every head bowed. The smell of ozone thickened, pressing against my tongue. And then, motion. The train lurched forward, faster than before. The hum deepened into a roar. For a while, I forgot that I was even moving. It was like being inside a heartbeat, constant and eternal. The walls pulsed with faint light. The windows showed nothing but streaks of gray. I kept one hand on the lever, unable to let go. My reflection still wore the cap, its eyes pale and unblinking. I whispered, "Who are you?" The reflection smiled. "Who were you?" I don't remember sleeping, but I remember waking. The cabin had changed. It was smaller now, the mirrors closer together. My own reflection barely fit inside the frame. Outside, the tunnel looked wider, lit by a strange bluish glow. Figures walked along the rails barefoot, translucent, their movements slow and solemn. One of them turned its head toward me, and I saw that it had no face, only a faint, circular burn where its mouth should have been. I think they were trying to speak. "Muck." The whisper was so faint I thought I'd imagined it, but the more I listened, the clearer it became. "You left us behind." I pressed my hands against the glass. "Who are you?" The figures stopped walking. Every single one turned to face the train. "We were on the line. You were supposed to stop." My throat closed, because I remembered. The night of the accident years ago, I'd been there, not as a passenger, as the conductor. The realization hit like a power surge. My skin prickled. Images crashed into each other, sparks raining from the ceiling, screams muffled by smoke, my own hands on the lever as the red light screamed. "Stop." And I didn't. Why didn't I? I saw the faces again. The man with the briefcase, the woman with the bouquet. The same one sitting behind me now. They hadn't left. They'd stayed. Trapped. Because I never stopped the train. The reflection began to laugh. Softly, at first. Then louder. It wasn't cruel. It was almost kind. "You see now," it said, "we keep the line alive. Every loop, every turn, someone has to drive." I stumbled back, clutching my head. No, I didn't mean to. Intent doesn't matter. Only continuity. I felt the cabin constrict, mirrors folding closer, pressing cold against my shoulders. My breath fogged the glass, and the fog didn't fade. It spread, covered my reflection's mouth. Then, slowly, the fog turned black. When I opened my eyes again, the cabin was silent. The lever in my hand was gone. The cap lay neatly folded at my feet. I bent down to pick it up, and for a moment, I hesitated. It was warm. When I placed it on my head, the noise stopped. The walls straightened. The mirrors cleared. And outside, the figures on the tracks bowed their heads like mourners acknowledging a priest. The announcement chimed again. "Steady now. Next stop, terminal loop." I pulled the lever. The train obeyed. Sometimes, when the flicker comes, I see another me still wandering through the carriages, calling out to passengers that don't answer. He hasn't realized yet. I watch him through the mirrors, and I almost feel sorry. But the line must stay alive. Someone has to guide it through the dark. And the rails, they hum like veins. If you listen closely, you can hear them whisper, "Keep moving, keep moving, keep The words blur into the rhythm of the train, and I am the rhythm now. The train hums again, not forward, not backward, but around, a loop, unseen yet felt, winding like a heartbeat buried beneath concrete. I open my eyes, and the world inside the carriage breathes with me. The overhead lights flicker not in rhythm, but in recognition. They know I'm awake. Every seat is filled now. I don't remember when they came aboard. At first, they look human. Faces pale from the underground air, expressions blank with fatigue. Commuters, office workers, students, all shapes of the living city. But then, I notice the stillness. Their breaths don't mist. Their eyes, glassy and wet, don't blink. I try to speak, but the words dry in my throat. Only the electric hum answers me. Then, a woman sitting across from me, early 30s, short blonde hair, hands folded neatly in her lap, turns her head a fraction. Her neck creaks like a hinge. She looks at me with recognition, or something older than that. "You're late," she whispers. Her lips barely move. My voice finally cracks free. "Late for what?" Her head tilts. The remembering, then the lights die again. For a moment, there's no sound except the slow groan of metal cooling. I reach out, my palm brushing the cold rail. Static jumps to my skin, tiny, stinging. And then, faintly, I hear it, a rhythmic clicking. Not mechanical, not random, counting. Tick, tick, tick. It's coming from the floor beneath me. I crouch down, pressing my ear to the metal. The sound travels through the train like a pulse. Each tick matches the faint flicker of the emergency lights outside the windows. Then beneath it, a second rhythm joins in, a whispering chorus. They're murmuring names. At first, it's only a few. Anna, Leon, Marie. Then it builds dozens, hundreds layered voices rising from every direction. The names form a pattern, looping back on themselves, repeating every few seconds. I try to stand, but the carriage sways violently, throwing me against a row of seats. The passengers' heads all turn toward me in unison, slow, synchronized, grotesquely calm. The blonde woman rises from her seat. "There's no exit between memories," she says. Her hand reaches out, trembling. "Only recall." She presses her palm to my forehead. The world snaps open. I'm standing on a different train, the same one, but before. The lights are brighter. The walls clean, unburned. Laughter, chatter, the faint rattle of wheels gliding smoothly along tracks. It's the night of the accident. I don't need anyone to tell me I feel it in the air. The electricity is too alive, too sharp, vibrating like it wants to break free. And there I am, sitting 2 rows away, head down, scrolling through my phone. I watch myself breathe. My own wrist flickers faintly under the light, an invisible scar that hasn't yet formed. Across the aisle, the conductor walks by, uniform pressed, eyes vacant. He pauses, stares right through me, then gives a slow nod as if acknowledging an old acquaintance. "You'll remember soon," he murmurs, almost kind. Then the overhead speaker crackles, distorted by static. "Terminal station. Next stop. But..." The announcement never finishes. The blast comes like the roar of a storm inside a tunnel, white light, then black. I jolt back into the loop, the dead train again, but now the faces around me are aware. They're all watching me. The blonde woman sits again, folding her hands as if nothing happened. The man beside her, a middle-aged businessman with burn marks on his neck, begins to hum an old melody under his breath. The tune is circular, unfinished. I can't tell if it's a hymn or a warning. He turns his head slowly toward me. "We remember because we have to," he says. Each word is measured, deliberate. If we forget, the train stops. And when it stops, it feeds. I glance toward the window. There's nothing but darkness outside, no tunnel walls, no movement. Yet the sensation of motion continues, a journey without space, a destination without time. Then I notice the floor. A faint glow seeps between the metal panels, thin white lines pulsing softly, like veins. With each pulse, the passengers twitch, With each pulse, a whisper, "Stay seated." The realization hits the train isn't carrying them. It's feeding on them. And the remembering the repetition of the accident, that's how it keeps the current alive. I try to shout, to break the silence. Why me? Why do I remember? The woman smiles faintly, sadness folding across her face. Because you were awake when it happened. You didn't die right away. Her words sink like ice. You screamed, she continues, and the sound. The train heard you. The man beside her adds softly. Now it uses your voice to keep the loop going. Suddenly, from the far end of the carriage, the doors slide open with a hiss. A cold gust rushes through. The conductor steps in. His uniform is the same dark navy, brass buttons, but his face has changed. It's no longer human skin. It's a shimmer, a distortion of air and memory. His mouth moves, and I hear the speaker crackle overhead, though his lips barely part. All passengers, please remain seated. His eyes, twin voids, sweep across the train. Every passenger bows their head. In mechanical reverence, he walks toward me, his footsteps silent. As he passes each person, their burned wrists flicker faintly like dying embers reigniting. When he reaches me, he stops. "You've seen too much," he says. His voice sounds like a mix of my own and 1,000 others. "You remember in the wrong direction." He reaches into his coat and pulls something out, a small, charred ticket. It's blackened but intact, my name half visible on it. "Your fare was never paid in full," he murmurs. "And until it is, you'll ride with us." He slips the ticket into my pocket and steps back. Then, with a subtle nod, he vanishes, dissolving into the hum of the train itself. The passengers begin whispering again, but now, instead of names, they repeat a date. The day of the crash. The day I died. The day that never stops coming back. The humming intensifies. The lights pulse faster. Through the window I see shapes, echoes of tunnels, stations, moments rushing past like old film reels melting together. The man beside me leans forward. He'll get used to it. We all did. His hand rests on mine, and it's cold, conductive. A faint spark dances between our skin. He looks down at my wrist. The mark is darkened, a black ring encircling it like a shackle. "Don't fight it," he says. "The train remembers for us now." And as he says it, I realize he's right, because the faces around me begin to blur, melt, reform, and one of them looks like me. Not just similar, exact. The same clothes, the same expression, the same flicker of panic. 2 of me, then 3, each seated in a different carriage, repeating the same moment. The loop has multiplied. The overhead speaker crackles one last time. Next stop, memory. The lights go out completely, and when they come back, I'm sitting again. Alone. No passengers. No conductor. Just the hum. But something's different. There's a faint glow on the opposite seat, a reflection, like someone just stood up. And on the window's fogged glass, written in trembling handwriting, are the words, "Do not remember." I stare at them until they fade. The train slows. Or maybe it doesn't. It doesn't matter. Because as the rails scream beneath me, I can feel it. The loop tightening, preparing for another run. And deep in the electric hum, beneath the static and the ticking, I can hear the passengers again. Not whispering names this time, whispering mine. The tunnel is quieter tonight. Or maybe it's only pretending to be. Silence, I've learned, is how the train breathes, shallow, patient, mechanical. I've lost track of how long I've been here. Days, nights, they don't mean anything underground. The fluorescent lights hum in steady indifference, painting my skin with that ghostly pallor of things half remembered. The mark on my wrist is no longer just a scar. It pulses faintly now, like a vein that belongs to the train itself. Every time it beats, the rails tremble in response. I used to count the turns, thinking I could map the loop, find where it started. But there isn't a start. There's just motion, endless, circular, consuming. The passengers return sometimes. They drift in and out of focus like smudges on glass. Familiar faces, all of them watching. waiting for the moment they can dissolve back into me. They're not ghosts anymore. They're echoes, and I'm learning their language. It begins in the metal a hum at first, low and sympathetic, like the sound of a cello played beneath the earth. Then words emerge, buried in the vibration. Stay seated. Remember us. Do not wake. The voice isn't one voice anymore. It's many. The passengers, the conductor, the power coursing through the rails, and somewhere beneath it all, my own voice, distorted and unrecognizable. I try to speak aloud just to remind myself I still can. My name is Mark. N. But it doesn't sound right. The name slides away from me, caught in the static, and then the speaker crackles faint, distant, as if someone else is answering. Mark. Confirmed. Passenger recognized. The system knows me now. I've become part of its manifest. I start seeing flashes again. Not memories, reflections. A girl in a red coat, clutching a broken phone. An old man asleep with his eyes open. A mother holding a child that keeps vanishing between frames of light. Every flicker, another moment stolen from time, the train feeding, replaying. It occurs to me that maybe there wasn't an accident. Maybe the train didn't crash. Maybe it just closed its doors one night and decided never to open them again. There's movement at the far end of the carriage. The doors hiss open without sound, and the conductor steps through once more. His figure is clearer this time. He's not a ghost, not anymore. He's an outline filled with static, shaped by electricity. His badge glows faintly. Monsieur Keller. My name. He's wearing my name. You've done well, he says, voice layered like overlapping tape. The loop is almost complete. I shake my head, words slipping from my mouth like ash. I don't want this. I don't belong here. You said that before, he answers gently. And you said it again. And you'll say it after. That's how the remembering works. He gestures to the seats. All the passengers are here again, hundreds of them sitting in perfect silence. But now I see it clearly. Each face flickers with mine. Different expressions, different versions of me. All the marks that never made it out. I stumble backward, pressing against the window. The glass feels alive, soft, breathing. Outside, the tunnel glows faintly with phosphorescent residue. Veins of light tracing through darkness. It looks like circuitry. This isn't real, I whisper. It's a machine. The conductor nods slowly. Yes, and you're the current. He raises a gloved hand, and the air fills with that familiar hum, low, resonant, swallowing everything. My mark begins to burn. Lines of electricity crawl up my arm like living thread, weaving through my veins. Why me? I choke out. His head tilts. Because you stayed awake. He steps closer, the static outlining his face until it nearly touches mine. When the others died, they gave up their voices. But you screamed. You gave the train a sound to follow. He pauses, almost tender. It was lonely. Until you. The lights flicker wildly, faster. And suddenly, I see them all. Not just the passengers. The entire loop. Every iteration of the train, running through every possible moment of its existence, layered over itself like transparent film. 1,000 loops, infinite, recursive, each containing a version of me. Screaming, whispering, remembering. The rails beneath the carriage glow white hot. The tunnel bends inward. I can feel the gravity of repetition pulling at my skin. The conductor holds out his hand. You can fight the loop, he says, or you can become it. His hand is trembling now, not with threat, but with longing. The static around him frays, unstable. He's breaking apart. The system is losing coherence. Take my place, he whispers. Let me rest. For a heartbeat, everything stops. The lights freeze mid-flicker. The hum cuts out. All I can hear is the echo of my own pulse, slow, deliberate, the only thing that's ever truly mine. And then I look at him. Really look. His outline is failing, flickering between conductor's coat, my reflection, and nothing at all. Inside the distortion, I glimpse his face, exhausted, hollow, pleading. He was me once. He's what happens when the remembering wins. I step forward. My shoes leave faint burns on the floor. Will it end? I ask. He hesitates, then nothing ends, but it changes shape. I reach out. Our hands meet. The moment our palms touch, the world folds inward, metal screaming, light collapsing. The loop compresses into a single point of unbearable brightness. Then, kid. When sound returns, it's the low hum of the train again. Only now, I'm standing in the conductor's booth. The window before me shows a tunnel that doesn't move. It vibrates with possibility. The control panel hums softly beneath my hands. My reflection in the glass wears the same navy coat, the same brass buttons. The badge gleams faintly. Monsieur Keller. Outside, in the carriages behind me, I hear the passengers breathe, hundreds of them. The rhythm is perfect, synchronized. A living machine of memory and electricity. And from somewhere deep in the rails, a whisper rises. All aboard. The train begins to move. I pull the lever, and the lights flicker in response, obedient, alive. The sound is beautiful in its inevitability. Each vibration a thread connecting every version of me that ever was. Every death, every scream. For the first time I understand. The loop isn't punishment, it's preservation. Every echo, every repetition, it's how the city remembers those it lost underground. We keep the lights on. We keep the current flowing. And maybe, one night, someone else will stay awake long enough to hear the hum and wonder why it sounds like a voice. Through the static of the intercom, I speak softly at first, then clearer. Next stop, terminal memory. My voice doesn't shake. It blends with the machine perfectly. A tone both human and not. As the tunnel curves inward and the rails stretch into infinity, I allow the hum to fill me completely through skin, through thought, through time, and for the first time since the crash, I don't feel lost. I feel necessary. Stay seated. The train remembers. The heirloom's toll. I didn't want to take it. You should know that before anything else. When she pressed the small box into my hand, her fingers were so cold, I thought she'd already gone. My great-grandmother, Agnes, 98 years old, a woman who spoke to empty corners and kept the curtains drawn even in summer. I'd only met her a handful of times, always in this same house, a slanted relic that seemed half collapsed into the hillside. The air inside smelled of starch, of lavender sachets gone gray with dust. Every clock ticked a different rhythm, and yet they all felt in sync, like a heartbeat scattered through the rooms. She looked at me from the bed, her pupils almost swallowed by the cloudy blue of her eyes. "You're the last one who still remembers me," she whispered. "So you'll keep it until it remembers you." I didn't understand what she meant. I still don't. The box was velvet, dark green, frayed along the seams. Inside lay a hair brooch, old, heavy, gleaming faintly in the weak afternoon light. The garnet at its center was a deep, unnatural red, the kind of color you only see in candlelight or blood. Around it, the metal curled in filigreed vines, too intricate for its age. When I tilted it, I saw tiny threads trapped under the glass hair, golden brown, looped carefully in a pattern that looked almost like letters. I wanted to ask whose hair it was, but Agnes was already asleep. She died 2 nights later. I was there when it happened. The house had gone quiet in that heavy way, places due before death, as if holding its breath. I sat on the chair by her bed, scrolling through my phone to stay awake, when she reached out suddenly and grabbed my wrist. Her nails dug into my skin. Her lips trembled, but her voice was clear. "Listen when it calls." Then her hand fell away. For a moment I thought she was still breathing until the wind outside shifted, and the whole room exhaled with her. The funeral was small. My mother cried the right amount. My cousins stared at their watches. I stood apart, feeling like I'd been cast in the wrong role. Everyone else left that evening, but I stayed behind to help clean the house. That's when I heard it. Not a voice. Not yet. Just a sound, faint, metallic, click, like a clasp being fastened. I turned. The brooch lay on the dresser. I could have sworn I'd left it in the drawer. I told myself I'd keep it until the estate was settled. Then I'd sell it or give it to a museum. I told myself a lot of things. But that night, lying in the guest room with the brooch on the nightstand, I couldn't sleep. The air hummed faintly, a low vibration that seemed to come from inside the walls. My phone kept losing signal, the screen flickering between one bar and none. Around 2 a.m., I felt it. The temperature dropped. You know that kind of cold that isn't just air, it's presence? That's what it was. The room didn't feel empty anymore. Something brushed against my hair. I sat up, heart hammering. Nothing there. The curtains barely moved, and then click. The sound came again. Soft, deliberate, like the hinge of the brooch opening. I reached for the lamp. The light stuttered before settling. The brooch was closed, motionless. But the garnet shimmered faintly, as if reflecting a candle that wasn't there. And for a moment, I thought I saw a reflection inside it, a woman's face, pale and distant, her mouth moving soundlessly. I left the house the next morning. Back in the city, everything should have felt normal again. My apartment was bright, loud, cluttered, but the brooch came with me. I don't remember packing it. It was just there, on my desk. When I unpacked, I told myself it was sentimental, that maybe I'd grown attached to it because it was the last thing she'd given me. Then, the messages stopped. My group chat went silent. The phone calls from my mother gone. When I texted first, there was no delivered mark, just the endless bubble of waiting. Even my reflection looked delayed a split second behind. The brooch sat by the mirror, its garnet dull now. When I picked it up, I felt the faintest pulse, like a heartbeat. 2 nights later, I pinned it in my hair. I don't know why I did it. Maybe curiosity, maybe defiance, maybe loneliness. The weight of it against my skull was comforting at first, grounding. Then the silence deepened. It wasn't the kind of silence that comes when everyone's asleep. It was the kind that eats sound, that swallows everything until even your breath feels wrong. I spoke aloud. Hello? Just to hear something human. But my voice didn't echo. It just disappeared. I turned toward the window. Outside, the city lights flickered, but there were no cars, no people, no hum of life. The world looked paused, and in that stillness, I heard it. A faint sobbing somewhere close. Soft, continuous, like someone crying through cloth. I looked in the mirror. There was a woman behind me. She was dressed in black, her hair wound tight in a braid, her face colorless except for her eyes. Eyes the same shade as the garnet. Her mouth moved, but I couldn't hear her words. Only one came clear, whispered inside my skull. Stay. I ripped the brooch out of my hair. It caught a few strands as it came free, tugging hard enough to draw blood. The moment it hit the floor, the sound returned the hum of traffic. The refrigerator, my own breathing. I almost laughed from relief. But when I looked down, the brooch was gone. Only a few red strands of hair lay on the tile. It's been 3 days since. My mother still hasn't called. My coworkers don't seem to notice when I speak. Sometimes I think the air around me bends slightly like heat haze, as if I'm not fully here. The only thing that feels real is the weight on my head when I wake up, the faint pull at my scalp, the whisper in my ear. You're almost ready. I check the mirror every morning. I still see myself, but each day, there's a little less color in my reflection. And sometimes, when I turn away too quickly, I glimpse a second figure standing behind me, a shape of red and shadow holding something small and shining, something that looks very much like a brooch. The silence began like a fog creeping, tender, unassuming. At first, it was only small things, unread messages, missed calls, a barista who handed my latte to the person behind me, even though I was standing right there. I laughed it off, a kind of nervous, brittle laugh like cracking porcelain. I told myself people were just distracted, that it was fine. But the day the mailman looked through me, Through me, I stopped laughing. He stood there at the gate, flipping through envelopes, then turned away without knocking. I was on the porch, in my robe, mug in hand. I called his name. My voice fell flat, swallowed by the cold morning. No echo, no answer. Just the wind, dragging its nails along the wooden railings. That was the first time the stillness spoke. It wasn't a voice at first, not exactly. More like a hum under my ribs, like something vibrating between my heartbeat and breath. It said nothing I could understand, only rhythm, the way rain might whisper if it had a mouth. That night, I found myself holding the Tromkai, the brooch, in my palm again. I hadn't meant to. I thought I'd left it in the drawer after the funeral. But there it was, gleaming faintly in the dark, its garnet stone pulsing with a dull red light. Not bright, not threatening, just alive. I pressed a fingertip against it. It was warm, and that hum it grew louder. The following days blurred. I stopped hearing from my mother. The group chat fell silent. Even my cat, Rumi, began to hiss at the corner of the room whenever I entered. My reflection in the mirror still smiled, still blinked, but it looked delayed, as if she was waiting for me to move first. I started recording myself, just to make sure I was real. Voice memos, notes, anything. Day 4, I said into my phone. Still, no messages. It's like the world forgot me. Like I've been erased from every memory except my own. Playback. Static. Then, you are not erased. I dropped the phone. The voice was soft, womanly. It came through the speaker, calm and deliberate, as though she'd been waiting a long time to be heard. You are seen, she said. You are chosen. Her tone was gentle, but her words slid beneath my skin, like a needle threading something fine and irreversible. I didn't sleep that night. I sat by the window, holding the brooch close, watching the red light throb like a heartbeat. I wanted to throw it away. I even opened the window once, felt the winter air sting my cheeks, but my fingers wouldn't release it. It wasn't that I couldn't, it was that I didn't want to, because when I held it, I didn't feel invisible anymore. I began to hear her more clearly. The woman in the tram. She never told me her name, but I began calling her the other. The other didn't command. She suggested. She told me how to braid my hair the way they used to. She whispered old words in a language I didn't know, vowels that tasted like copper and rain when I tried repeating them aloud. Each time I pinned the brooch into my hair, I felt her hum in my skull, a quiet vibration of belonging. And when I looked in the mirror, my reflection's lips sometimes moved a moment before mine. The first time it happened, I touched the mirror. It was warm. By the second week, people stopped reacting to me entirely. A barista handed my coffee to no one. My boss forgot I existed. Even my landlord left eviction notices that started with, "To whom it may concern," never my name. The world was folding me out of itself, one seam at a time. But at night, when the streetlights flickered through the blinds, she would hum softly from the brooch, and the air would fill with warmth. It wasn't a haunting. It was company. It was attention. "You see," she whispered one night, her voice rippling through the stillness. "When the world forgets you, I remember you. That's what love is, Chloe." I cried then, not from fear, but from relief. The stillness grew thicker. My apartment felt submerged. The ticking clock sounded underwater, muffled and slow. My movements left faint trails in the air, like time was lagging behind me. Once, I called my mother again, just to hear her voice. She answered, but it wasn't me she was speaking to. "Hi, sweetie," she said brightly. "Yes, I saw your post. The trom looks beautiful on you." My throat tightened. "Mom, can you hear me?" She kept talking, smiling into the silence. "I'm so proud you're wearing it. It suits you. It always suited you." I dropped the phone because I realized she wasn't talking to me. She was talking to her. I stopped eating. I stopped checking the time. Every sound in the apartment became a memory of movement, the faint echo of footsteps that weren't mine, laughter that wasn't now. The brooch pulsed. I could feel it in my blood now, a quiet bell tolling whenever I breathed too deeply. "Do you know why they forget you?" she asked one night. "Because you were never meant to stay there. The living world is cruel. It breaks what it doesn't understand." "Handfuls." I shook my head, whispered, "I don't want to die." She laughed softly. "Then don't. Just stay with me. Between." I woke up once with my hair perfectly braided, though I hadn't touched it. My skin smelled faintly of lavender and dust, the scent of something that hadn't been alive for a long time. The brooch was pinned to my hair again. I tried pulling it out, but it caught against my scalp. It felt rooted, and in the mirror, she smiled at me. Not a reflection. Not anymore. Her dress was older, her hair darker, her eyes full of light that wasn't human. "Now you see," she said. "We are not two. We are one." I screamed. I tore at the brooch, nails splitting, scalp bleeding, but the garnet glowed brighter, and my screams echoed wrong as though they were coming from the walls instead of my mouth. When I finally collapsed, I heard her whisper right against my ear, "Shh. They can't hear you anymore. Only I can." And then, beneath the sound of my own sobs, I heard it faint but clear. A second heartbeat. Slow, steady, beating with mine. The brooch pulsed once more. The room dimmed. The world outside continued unaware, unbothered as the stillness wrapped around me completely. No more calls, no more echoes, only us. And the hum, endlessly soft, endlessly loving. The first thing I noticed when I woke up was the smell. Lavender. Yes, but older, earthier, tinged with something metallic, the kind of scent that clings to velvet kept too long in a locked chest. I sat up slowly, my hair falling heavy over my shoulder. The brooch caught the morning light. The garnet stone glowed, not reflected, but burned. I tried not to look at it, but my eyes were drawn there. The color had changed. It wasn't blood red anymore. It was deeper, almost black, with veins of crimson light running through it, pulsing like veins, like it was breathing. When I blinked, I saw a face in the reflection of that stone, not mine, a woman. Her features blurred, soft, like watercolor under rain, but her eyes were sharp, ancient, rimmed with sadness so deep it bordered on obsession. She didn't speak at first. She just watched me, as though studying how much of me was left. I stumbled to the mirror, half expecting not to see myself at all. But there I was, a little pale, a little tired. My hands trembled, yet something was off. The reflection lagged. A half-second delay, not enough to notice unless you're looking for it. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. My chest rose. The reflections followed. My hand lifted. Hers hesitated, then mirrored me. And then just before I turned away, her lips moved. They shaped a word. Mine. I tried to leave the apartment that morning. The front door wouldn't open. The lock turned endlessly, like the key was sliding in air. The hallway light flickered outside, taunting me through the peephole. I shouted for help. A raw, desperate cry. It tore at my throat, but my voice didn't reach past the wood. Then I heard it. The hum, low and steady, vibrating through the walls. "Stay inside," she whispered. "The world doesn't want you anymore. You're not real," I whispered back. I'm what's left," she interrupted. "Of you. Of every woman who wore me." The air shimmered faintly. I could smell rain now, though the window was closed. The garnet on my dresser pulsed again, rhythmic, like a heartbeat sinking to mine. That's when I noticed the sound of another breath, soft, right behind mine. Every mirror in the house began to hum, not loud, just enough to feel it in the spine. The glass trembled, the reflection slightly warping, as though a hand was pressed against the other side. In the bathroom mirror, I saw her clearly for the first time. She was older than me, or perhaps not older, just worn. Her hair was pinned the same way, her brooch gleaming in the same place. But her eyes were red, not glowing, just red veins bloomed like spider webs around the irises. "You shouldn't fight it," she murmured. It's always easier when you accept. Accept what? That you are never alone. The train remembers everyone it loved. It keeps them close. She smiled, and for a moment, I saw hundreds of faint silhouettes in the glass behind her women, all wearing the same garnet pin, all whispering soundlessly, their mouths open in a voiceless song. We belong together, Chloe, she said. You felt it, didn't you? The warmth, the stillness. I backed away. My reflection stayed still. I stopped checking the time. I wasn't sure it passed the same way anymore. Sometimes morning came too fast. Sometimes night fell and refused to end. I'd catch my reflection moving while I stood still. My phone battery never died, even after hours of recording. When I replayed the audio, the voice that answered wasn't mine anymore. You keep forgetting who you are, she said on one recording, but that's all right. I'll remember for you. Her voice was calmer now, no longer separate. Just a shadow tucked beneath mine. I didn't know where my body ended, and her presence began. It got worse when Lucy came over. She was my last friend still trying to reach me. She knocked for nearly 10 minutes before I finally opened the door. Jesus, Chloe, you look like hell, she said, brushing past me. You've been ignoring everyone. Your mom's been calling me non-stop. You can see me? She frowned. What kind of question is that? For the first time in weeks, someone saw me. The air around me trembled, disoriented. The hum in the walls stopped abruptly, like it had been cut off. I almost sobbed. Lucy, I whispered, clutching her hand. Don't leave, okay? Please don't leave. She squeezed back, awkward but warm. I'm not going anywhere. Then she noticed the brooch. That's new, she said, reaching toward my hair. I flinched. Don't touch it. Her expression changed confusion, then faint unease. Why? It's just jewelry, right? Before I could answer, the hum started again, low, sharp, angry. Lucy froze. The light flickered, and in the mirror behind her, the reflection smiled. Not me, not Lucy, her. She doesn't belong here, the voice whispered. She'll take you away. Lucy gasped, spinning toward the mirror. Did you hear that? Hear what? I lied. The hum grew louder. The air thickened. My scalp burned where the brooch pinned my hair. Chloe, Lucy said slowly, backing away. I think you need help. Like, real help. And that's when the reflection moved again. It reached out its hand through the glass. Lucy screamed. The room flashed red. I don't remember moving, but suddenly she was gone. Just gone. And I was standing alone, breathless, the garnet in my hair pulsing bright as a wound. The mirror was cracked, and behind the cracks, I saw her smiling. After that, I stopped hearing from anyone else. Lucy's number disconnected. My mother's voice on the line sounded hollow, like an old recording left to rot on a tape. My apartment smelled like lavender and iron. I kept the curtains drawn, though sometimes the streetlights bled through, painting the walls crimson. When I closed my eyes, I could feel the pulse of the brooch steady, certain, comforting. You see, she murmured. She was trying to take you away. The world always takes, Chloe. But I keep. Her voice was inside me now, not outside. A steady murmur under my thoughts, like a shared breath. You're not real, I whispered again. Then what are you? She replied. I had no answer. I started to see flashes, not memories, but echoes. A ballroom, candlelight, a woman laughing, then another woman crying, then silence and the slow hum of centuries passing. They all wore me, she said softly. They all promised. They all stayed. Stayed where? Here. I looked at the cracked mirror. The faces behind the glass were waiting hundreds, maybe thousands, faint and flickering, their hair pinned with the same crimson stone. You'll understand soon, she whispered. Stillness isn't death. It's love that doesn't end. That night, I dreamed of her, but it didn't feel like a dream. I stood in a room made of mirrors, infinite versions of myself, each slightly off, some smiling, some weeping, some standing still. In the center stood a woman in a red gown, her hair braided exactly like mine. She lifted her hand, and I felt mine lift too. "You've warned me well," she said. "Who are you?" I asked. She smiled. "The beginning. And me?" Her eyes softened. "The end. I'm." When I woke, my pillow was wet, with blood small streaks where my scalp had torn under the brooch. My head throbbed, but the pain was distant, like it belonged to someone else. I rose, calm, eerily calm, and looked in the mirror. My reflection smiled before I did, and for the first time her eyes and mine were the same color. The house grew smaller every day. Not in any physical sense. The walls didn't close in, the ceiling didn't drop, but the air condensed, denser, thicker, like the apartment was breathing, and each exhale pressed closer against my ribs. I'd forgotten what silence used to sound like. Now, every quiet moment was threaded with that low hum, the one that seemed to come from inside the walls, or from inside me. When I moved through the rooms, I could feel it, the hum shifting, following, listening. The mirror in the hallway had cracked deeper since the night Lucy vanished. The lines spidered outward like veins. When the light hit just right, they shimmered, red as garnet. I covered it with a cloth once, but it didn't stay. By morning, the fabric had slid to the floor, as if brushed aside by unseen hands. I tried to tell myself I'd done it in my sleep. That explanation used to comfort me. Now it just felt like a polite lie I told the house so it wouldn't hurt me. I barely recognized my own voice anymore. When I spoke, it came out slower, thicker. Each word felt like it passed through someone before reaching air. "You're blending beautifully," she said one night, her tone both proud and tender. It took me years to reach that calm. "I don't want calm," I whispered. "I want out." A pause. Then, like a mother correcting a child, "You don't mean that." And maybe she was right. The thought of leaving felt less like freedom and more like tearing skin. I couldn't imagine the world without this weight in my hair, this low pulse against my scalp. "It's not possession," she murmured. "It's preservation." "You're lying." "No, you're the liar, Chloe. You lied to yourself when you thought anyone truly saw you." That cut deeper than it should have, because she was right. Even before the brooch, I'd been good at vanishing. The quiet one. The reliable friend who remembered everyone's birthdays, but was never remembered in return. The daughter who answered every call, but whose own messages went unread. "You were already half shadow," she said. "I just gave you form." The strange thing was, when she said it, I didn't feel fear. I felt relief. The garnet glowed brightest at night now. I stopped sleeping in the bedroom. I couldn't stand how the red light bled into the walls. But when I moved to the couch, it followed, reflecting off the darkened TV screen, pooling like candlelight. Sometimes, when the hum deepened, I saw movement within the stone, faint outlines, faces pressed just beneath its surface. They never screamed or begged. They just waited. "You'll meet them soon," she whispered. "They'll welcome you." It's a quiet company, but a kind one. "Are they dead?" I asked. A pause. "Then, they're kept." I started hearing footsteps upstairs. Slow, deliberate pacing back and forth. There was no upstairs. The sound came every night at the same hour, the rhythm steady, measured, like someone rehearsing a procession. It should have terrified me, but instead I found myself timing my breath to it. One step. Inhale. Another step. Exhale. "That's it," she said softly. "You're sinking." The word filled my mouth with warmth, and something else, a faint metallic taste, like iron on my tongue. The next morning, I found a letter on my kitchen table. No stamp, no envelope, just a folded piece of paper written in looping cursive. The ink shimmered dark red. "Chloe, you are almost ready. The stillness suits you. The world has begun to forget, hasn't it? The calls that never come, the messages that never send. Don't mourn it. Every tether must be cut before you're truly seen." I had no friends whose names started with E. The more I tried to resist, the more she filled me, not through pain, but through gentle correction. She spoke through my thoughts, now quiet, confident, always right. When I brushed my hair, my hand moved slower than I intended, as if savoring the ritual. When I ate, the food tasted like dust, unless I imagined she was tasting it too. "You're doing beautifully," she said. "Do you remember the garden?" "What garden?" "Ours." And then I saw it, not a memory, but a scene slipping through my mind. A greenhouse choked with ivy, sunlight bleeding through stained glass, the air filled with the smell of wilted roses. In the center, a woman stood before a mirror, her hair pinned with the same red stone. "You promised me you'd never leave," she said. I blinked and the vision was gone. Days or weeks passed. Time lost shape. I woke sometimes to find the furniture rearranged. Other times, the windows looked out onto streets I didn't recognize, old cobblestone lanes, horse carriages, flickering gas lamps. "We're between times," she said. "Between breaths, between lives." I didn't ask how. I didn't need to. The words themselves vibrated with something ancient. The brooch had stopped pulsing now. It didn't need to. Its rhythm and mine had become one. I recorded a voice memo once I wanted proof I was still me, but when I played it back, the voice that spoke was calm, elegant, deliberate. "I'm Chloe," it said, "and I am not alone." The voice paused. Then, "We are content." The way it said we sent chills through me, not fear, but resignation, a sense of inevitability. The night of the first storm, I stood by the window watching the lightning strobe across the city. For a heartbeat, I saw dozens of faces reflected in the glass, pale, feminine, each with the same garnet gleam in their hair. They smiled in unison. "You see us now," she whispered. "You've always been one of us." "No," I said softly, though the word lacked conviction. "No, I haven't." "Then take it off." I reached up instinctively, fingers trembling, and grasped the brooch. For a moment, it burned cold against my skin. My scalp screamed as if roots tore from flesh. The hum faltered. The lights dimmed. "You can't," she said, almost pitying. "It's not jewelry. It's a bond." My hands dropped. I wept silently. That was the last night I dreamed in my own voice. Now, even my thoughts sounded shared, layered, harmonized, like two people breathing the same sentence. "You're not losing yourself," she said. "You're expanding. You're what I was. You're what I'll always be." The garnet flared once more, and I could see my reflection smiling in every surface, windows, mirrors, even the faint sheen of the television screen. And everywhere, her voice followed, soft and eternal. "Don't be afraid of the stillness, Chloe. It's where love goes to rest." By the end of that week, I stopped answering to my name. The few messages that still managed to reach my phone, wrong numbers, spam, echoes from a world that felt fictional, all began with, "Hello? Is anyone there?" I deleted them without opening, because someone was there. She always was. And her whisper, once foreign, had become my own. Chloe woke to sunlight on her face, soft, warm, almost forgiving. For a moment, she thought she had dreamt it all. The whispers, the vanishing calls, the sensation of drowning in stillness. Her hair, unpinned, fell loose across her pillow. The brooch was gone. A deep, hollow quiet filled the room. Then click, the sound came from her dressing table. The brooch lay there, glinting in the light, the garnet pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. Chloe's breath hitched. She rose slowly, her body feeling lighter, almost transparent. She went to the mirror, meaning to brush her hair, to prepare for the day, to anchor herself in something ordinary. But the girl in the mirror wasn't doing the same. Her reflection was smiling faintly, wrong lips parting in a delayed echo of Chloe's own movements. "Thank you," the reflection whispered. The voice wasn't hers. It was older, rounder, soaked in centuries. Chloe froze. The air in the room grew dense, humming with invisible threads. The curtains didn't move. though the sound of the wind pressed faintly from outside, muffled, like heard through a wall. "Who are you?" Chloe asked. Her own voice sounded muffled, damp, as though underwater. The reflection tilted its head. "You already know." The brooch shimmered brighter. The garnet flickered once, twice, then dimmed, as if inhaling. "You wore me." The reflection continued softly. "You fed me." The silence, the loneliness, the longing, all of it. You gave it form. "Into." "I didn't mean to," Chloe whispered. You did," the reflection said. "That's why I chose you." Her reflection stepped closer, leaned closer, from the other side of the glass. Chloe stumbled back, but her body no longer obeyed quickly enough. Her movements lagged, each motion sluggish, delayed. "Do you remember how they stopped seeing you?" the reflection murmured. "It wasn't me, Chloe. It was you." The words cut cleanly through the stillness. "You wanted quiet. You wanted to be left alone. You wanted to belong to something that wouldn't leave you. I know. You wanted someone to stay." Chloe's vision blurred. Her chest tightened. The brooch pulsed again, the light spilling outward, staining her reflection red. "I can give you that," said the reflection. "But you must give the rest of yourself to me." Then came the sound, the faint click of the brooch unlatching. Chloe looked down. It was in her hand, though she didn't remember touching it. The garnet glowed steadily now, the light breathing like an animal. Within it, she thought she saw an eye, pale, luminous, watching her. She looked around the room. There were no pictures anymore, no texts on her phone, no trace of anyone in her life. Her own voice echoed strangely against the walls. Thinner, weaker, she was already halfway gone. The reflection reached out again, fingertips pressing against the glass from within. The surface rippled faintly. Chloe lifted the brooch. Her hand trembled, then steadied. For a heartbeat, she saw both versions of herself, the one with warmth and flesh and heartbeat, and the other ageless, sharp, quietly smiling, waiting inside the mirror. Then, she pinned the brooch to her chest. Click. The world went silent. Her reflection blinked once, then straightened. On the other side of the glass, the room looked identical, except that the colors were deeper, richer, more alive. The reflection touched her hair, admiring it. Then she turned her gaze toward the window, where the faint hum of the outside world drifted in. A knock came at the door. "Chloe?" It was her mother's voice, gentle, unsure. "Breakfast ready." The reflection smiled. "I'll be right there," she said softly. Her voice steady, bright, familiar. When the door opened, sunlight poured in. The reflection turned once more toward the mirror, and for an instant, in the glass, the real Chloe could still be seen, trapped deep inside the garnet stone, mouth open in the silent scream. But the new Chloe, or whatever wore her shape, only brushed a strand of hair behind her ear and whispered, "Finally, someone remembered me." As the door closed, a faint sound echoed through the empty bedroom. A click, followed by the slow, rhythmic beat of a heart that was not entirely human. The brooch gleamed once, red as blood. Then the room was still again. Maybe it's not the ghosts that haunt us. Maybe it's the echoes we leave behind, the promises we break, the mirrors we stare into too long. Every story ends, but the silence that follows, that's where they live. If you hear a whisper tonight, don't answer it. Just listen.